Hey guys, tonight we are diving headfirst into the opulent, paranoid, and frankly, quite smelly world of the Tudor court. We're going to be exploring one of the most bizarrely powerful jobs in all of history, a position so prestigious that nobles would practically trip over each other for a chance at it. And your journey, your new career path, begins now. Let's be honest. Given the political climate of 16th century England, your chances of surviving the first week are debatable. But hey, where's the fun without a little risk? So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is in your city. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first thing you notice is the rain. It isn't the gentle, romantic drizzle of poetry, it's a stubborn, bone-chilling English rain that seems to soak right through the timber-framed walls of your modest family home. It drums a relentless rhythm on the thatched roof, a familiar sound that has scored most of your life. Life here is predictable. The seasons turn. The fields are plowed. And the biggest news is usually about a neighbor's prize-winning pig. You are the second son of a minor gentleman. A man whose land is respectable but whose name carries no weight in the grand halls of London. Your future is a neatly drawn, rather unexciting map, a sensible marriage, managing a piece of the family estate, and slowly growing old. Then, the sound changes. Over the drumming ray, you hear the heavy, rhythmic squelch of a horse being pushed hard, followed by a sharp shout. This is not a local sound. Local horses know the mud. They don't fight it. You part the thick, oiled cloth window covering and peer out. There, in the lane that's more river than road, is a man on a formidable, steam-breathing horse. H.E.S. dressed in the livery of a royal messenger. His cloak dark with rain, but the crest on his tunic a crown to the rose gleaming faintly in the grey afternoon light. He looks angry, exhausted, and utterly out of place. Your heart begins to beat a little faster, a nervous, frantic drum that competes with the rain. Royal messengers don't come to your corner of the world. They are omens, harbingers of either great fortune or terrible news, with very little in between. Your father, his face a mask of anxious curiosity, opens the heavy oak door. The messenger dismounts, his boots making a sickening sound as they pull free from the mud. He doesn't waste time on pleasantries. He holds out a sealed scroll of parchment. The wax seal is a perfect, imposing reed, stamped with the king's personal signet. It's for you. Your name, written in a confident, flowing script that seems impossibly elegant, is right there on the outside. You take the scroll. It feels heavier than it should, as if weighted with destiny. Your fingers tremble slightly as you break the seal. This is a significant act. A royal seal is not a thing to be broken lightly. The parchment unrolls with a crisp crackle that silences the room. The script inside is dense and formal, a thicket of words you have to decipher one by one. Many men of your station are barely literate, capable of signing their name and reading a simple prayer book. But this is a different beast entirely. It's a challenge to even read it aloud, a fact that makes your cheeks burn with a quiet shame. This document comes from a world that you do not belong to. It speaks of your family's long, though humble, history of loyalty to the crown, a phrase that confuses you, as far as you know. Your family's greatest contribution was providing two archers for a battle a century ago. It mentions a recommendation from a distant cousin who serves in the Queen's household. A cousin you haven't seen in a decade. This is the system of patronage in action, the vast, invisible web of favors and connections that holds the Tudor court together. You don't get a job. You are granted a position. And what a position it is. The letter is frustratingly vague, referring to a role of uncommon intimacy and trust. A chance to serve in proximity to the royal person. It demands your presence at Hampton Court Palace within the fortnight. There is no please or SVP, or we'd be delighted if you could join us. It is a summons. Pay command. Historians to this day still debate the true nature of these appointments. Were they carefully considered selections based on quiet observation and a search for loyal, discreet individuals, or were they, as is often the case in politics, simply about a powerful courtier needing to place a loyal follower upon? Like you in a strategic position close to the king, you don't have the luxury of academic debate. For you, this is happening right now. The scroll in your hand has just erased the simple, predictable map of your life. In its place is a terrifying, exhilarating blankness. London, the king, a position of uncommon intimacy. You have no idea what that means. But you know one thing for sure: your life, and the quiet rhythm of the rain, will never be the same. The journey to London is a blur of muddy roads, creaking carriage wheels, and the constant, unnerving feeling that you are traveling in the wrong direction. Every mile that takes you further from the familiar green of your home county pulls you deeper into a world you only know from exaggerated tavern tales. The city, when you finally arrive, is not just a place, it's a beast. It roars with the sound of 1,000 voices, the clatter of carts on cobblestone, and the incessant clang of blacksmiths' hammers. It smells of wood smoke, roasting meat, animal dung, and the river a thick, complex perfume of human endeavor. You, with your provincial clothes and wide eyes, feel like a field mouse that has stumbled into a bear pit. Hampton Court Palace is another shock to the system. It isn't a building, it's a small, walled city of striking red brick, endless courtyards, and towering chimneys that pump plumes of smoke into the sky. Hundreds of people mill about, courtiers in silks and velvets, guards with polished halberdiers, servants rushing on unseen errands. Their clothes are worth more than your family's entire flock of sheep. They walk with a purpose and a confidence that makes you feel clumsy and insignificant. You are led through a dizzying maze of corridors, past tapestries depicting grand battles and grim-faced royal ancestors, until you are deposited in a small, wood-paneled antechamber to wait. The silence in here is more intimidating than the noise outside. After what feels like an eternity, the door opens and a man enters. He is older, perhaps in his late 40s, with a neatly trimmed beard and eyes that seem to assess your entire life in a single glance. He introduces himself as Sir William Compton, a name you recognize with a jolt. He is one of the king's men, a name whispered with a mixture of fear and admiration. Yes, you will later learn, one of the first gentlemen of the Privy Chamber, and the man who currently holds the very position you've been summoned for. He is here to interview his potential successor. So he begins, his voice smooth and measured. You come with a recommendation, a loyal family. He paces the room slowly, his fine leather shoes making no sound on the thick rug. The king values loyalty above all else. But this post, it requires a different sort of character. It requires absolute discretion, the ability to be present, yet invisible, to see and hear everything, and to speak of nothing. You nod, your throat too dry to form words. This all sounds very noble, very cloak and dagger. You imagine yourself becoming a royal confidant, a keeper of state secrets. Sir William stops in front of you. Do you know what the primary duties of the Groom of the Stool are? You hazard a guess based on the title. To attend to the king's chambers, sir his wardrobe. By faint, humorless smile touches his lips. Among other things, the stool in question is the king's close stool, his portable commode. He lets the words hang in the air. The realization dawns slowly, then crashes over you like a pail of icy water. This stool, that's true, the position of uncommon intimacy, the summons. It all clicks into place with a horrifying, sickening clarity. Your face must betray your shock, because Sir William's smile widened slightly. Oh, he says, you see, it is not a position for the faint of heart, or for those with a delicate stomach. You will be responsible for assisting His Majesty with his daily ablutions. You will monitor his health, his regularity, his diet. You will be responsible for the washing, the cleaning, and ensuring the entire process is as comfortable and dignified as possible. He gestures to the corner of the room, where a velvet-covered box with a padded seat sits innocuously. It looks like a small throne. This is a fashionably weird piece of trivia. The king's commode was a piece of furniture, often sumptuously decorated, designed to be portable and always ready. It was, in its own way, a symbol of power. But, Sir William continues, and his voice drops, becoming more intense. Do not mistake the nature of this work for its importance. The man who does this, the man who attends the king in his most private and vulnerable moments, is the man the king will trust the most. He taps a finger on a heavy ledger sitting on a nearby desk. The groom of the Stool is also responsible for the privy purse, the king's personal finances, all his private spending, his grants, his secret projects. They flow through this office. For you. This is the mainstream historical fact that changes everything. The job wasn't just about hygiene, it was about cash. Unfiltered, direct from the king cash. Every lord and lady in this court, Sir William says, his eyes locking onto yours, every ambassador from a foreign land, every bishop and every general, they will all want a moment of the king's time. But the king's time is limited. His antechamber is crowded, but his time in the privy chamber, that is private. And who is there with him? The groom of the Stool. You become the gatekeeper, the ultimate filter. Your whisper into the king's ear is worth more than a duke's grand speech in the council chamber. Herein lies a debate that fascinates historians. What was the primary qualification for this role? Was it simply unflinching loyalty and a strong constitution, or was it a more subtle, almost clinical ability to observe? Some scholars argue that the groom was essentially the king's primary care physician, the first line of defense who could spot signs of illness long before the royal doctors with their quack theories of humors and astrology were ever called in. The true reason for your selection remains a mystery, a product of a recommendation and perhaps a lucky guess on someone's part that you have the right temperament. Sir William lets you absorb this. The initial disgust is still there, churning in your gut. But now it's mixed with something else, a dizzying, terrifying sense of opportunity. He is offering you a choice. You can return home to your life of predictable mud and drain, or you can take the strange, malodorous path to the very heart of power. Your job would be, on its face, the lowest in the court, but in reality, it could make you the most influential man in England. Your first day begins before the sun has even considered rising. You're roused from a nervous, fitful sleep in your new quarters, a small but surprisingly well-appointed room tucked away in a quiet part of the palace by a silent page boy who simply points. You follow him through a labyrinth of cold, torch-lit corridors. The sleeping palace is a different creature from the bustling daytime version. It's a place of shadows and echoes, where every creak of a floorboard sounds like an accusation. You can hear the snores of sleeping courtiers from behind heavy wooden doors, a strangely human sound in this intimidating stone giant. You are led to a suite of rooms that belong to the king alone, the privy chamber. This is the inner sanctum, a place only a handful of trusted individuals are ever allowed to enter. The air here is thick with the scent of beeswax polish, old wood, and the faint, lingering aroma of the king's expensive cologne. Sir William is waiting for you. He looks as immaculate as he did yesterday, his double perfectly pressed. You, by contrast, feel like a rumpled sack of potatoes. He doesn't greet you, he just hands you a neatly folded linen towel and a silver ewer filled with warm, rose-scented water. You will wake soon, is all he says. Do exactly as I do, and do not speak unless spoken to. The door to the king's bedchamber opens, and you get your first real look at him. He's not the flat, formal figure from the portraits. In the soft light of the tapered candles, King Henry is a mountain of a man, propped up on a sea of pillows in a bed so vast it could sleep a whole family. He is groaning softly, a low rumble that seems to vibrate through the floor. He is a young, vigorous king, but even kings wake up stiff and grumpy. Sir William moves with a practiced, almost balletic grace. He kneels, presents the basin of water, and assists the king in washing his hands and face. You just stand there, holding the towel, feeling utterly useless. The king barely glances at you, his eyes still clouded with sleep. Your first duty is to simply hand him the towel when prompted. Your hand is shaking so much you're afraid you'll drop it. He takes it, wipes his face, and tosses it back without a word. Then comes the moment you've been dreading. The king swings his powerful legs out of bed. He is wearing a fine linen nightshirt, but it does little to hide the sheer bulk and presence of the man. Sir William gives you a sharp, subtle nod. It's time. He leads the way into a small, adjoining room. This is it, the nerve center of your new career. It's surprisingly opulent. The walls are paneled in dark, carved oak. A small, stained glass window throws muted jewel-toned light onto the floor, and in the center sits the closed stool. It's a magnificent piece of furniture, a box of polished wood with a padded, red velvet seat. It really does look like a throne. Some historians suggest this was entirely intentional, a way of ensuring that even in his most base and human moments, the king's majesty was never diminished. He was still on a throne, even if it was a toilet. The king settles onto the stool with a grunt of relief. Tyndale, your job truly begins. Sir William demonstrates. You are to stand by. Ready. Your job is not to look away, but to observe. You're not just a valet, you are a medical monitor. You are watching for any sign of discomfort, any change in routine. This is where the real work lies. The king, in this moment, is not a monarch. He is just a man. Vulnerable and exposed, he is at the mercy of his own biology, just like the lowest stable boy. And you are the sole witness. The smell is potent. There's no getting around it. This is the unglamorous reality behind the silks and jewels. You fight the urge to gag. You focus on Sir William's calm, impassive face. He's done this 1,000 times. To him, it's no different than helping the king put on a glove. This moment feels like it stretches for an hour. The only sound is the king's heavy breathing and the faint crackle of the fire in the main chamber. You are so close to the monarch that you can hear the rustle of his linen shirt. See the individual hairs on his arms. It's an intimacy that is both profound and deeply, deeply awkward. When the king is finished, the real work starts. Sir William hands you a small bowl of water and a soft cloth. This is the part of the job description that was glossed over. You are to assist with the cleaning. You swallow hard, your mind screaming resign, flee, go back to the sheep. But you look at Sir William, and you look at the king, and you know there is no turning back. You perform the task. Your movements clumsy and uncertain. Your hands are cold with sweat. You try to be gentle but quick, professional. It's a task that requires a strange combination of servility and confidence. I read a little historical tidbit for you. The material used for this purpose wasn't just any old rag. Often, it was strips of soft, old linen or even fine wool, sometimes scented. The idea of rough, peasant-style toilet paper was unthinkable for a king. Once the king is clean and has returned to his bedchamber to be dressed by other attendants, Sir William closes the door to the privy. He looks at you. You probably look pale. So, now, he says, his voice matter of fact. You will empty the pan, clean it thoroughly with hot water and herbs, and prepare the stool for its next use. It must be spotless. It must be odorless. He hands you a bundle of dried herbs, rosemary and lavender. Burn a little of this. It helps. As you stand there, holding a heavy ceramic bowl filled with the King of England's waste, it hits you. This is it. This is your life now. You wanted to be close to power. Well, you found it. It's wrong. It's heavy. And it smells terrible. The desire to turn and run is almost overwhelming. But then you remember Sir William's words about the privy purse, about the whispers in the king's ear. This bowl, this humiliating, disgusting bowl, is the price of admission. The question that hangs in the air, stinking more than the bowl itself, is whether you have the stomach to pay it. The next few weeks are a masterclass in adaptation. You learn that survival in the palace, especially in your peculiar role, is about building routines until the extraordinary becomes mundane. Your life is now dictated by the king's bodily functions. You wake in the pre-dawn chill. You prepare the water and cloths. You attend the morning ritual. You claim. You wait. The process repeats itself throughout the day. It's a strange, rhythmic existence, a world away from the seasonal rhythms of the farm. Sir William, your stern and unsmiling mentor, drills you on the specifics of the trade. You learn that your job is a science as much as it is an art. You become intimately familiar with what you start to think of as your toolkit. It's not a set of physical objects you carry in a bag, but a collection of supplies and knowledge stored in a small chamber next to the king's privy. This is your domain. First, there are the cloths. You learn to distinguish between them with a connoisseur's touch. There are the soft, worn linens for the most delicate tasks, imported from Flanders and bleached in the sun. There are also homespun cloths for scrubbing the ceramic pan. You learn to inspect each one for the slightest imperfection. A single stray thread could, in theory, cause a royal irritation, and that is a dismissible offense. You are in charge of laundering them. The task you perform yourself with scalding water and harsh lye soap, your hands quickly becoming red and raw. Then there's the water. It's never just plain water. In the mornings, it's infused with rose petals or rosemary, intended to be invigorating. In the evenings, it might be steeped with chamomile or lavender, meant to be calming. You learn to brew these concoctions yourself, a skill more suited to an apothecary than a courtier. You are, in essence, a master of royal aromatherapy, manipulating the king's mood through carefully selected scents. And, of course, there is the centerpiece of your world, the close stool itself. You learn its every quirk. You learn how to air out the velvet cushion, how to polish the wood until it gleams, how to discreetly replace the pan without a single clatter that might disturb the king's concentration. You become an expert in acoustics and stealth. One of the most interesting historical debates revolves around the privacy of this moment. While your presence was required, was it a silent, solemn affair, or was it a time for conversation early on? For you, it is silent. The king is a distant, imposing figure, but you are learning to read the silences, to understand the subtle shift in his posture, the slight grunt that means he is in a bad mood, the relaxed sigh that means he is content. Your toolkit also includes knowledge. Sir William quizzes you relentlessly. What did the king eat for supper last night? He laughs. You must know. You are expected to liaise with the royal kitchens, to know if the wine was from France or Spain, if the meat was venison or beef. Did he sleep well? He'll demand. You must know. You are expected to talk to the page who sits outside the king's bedchamber all night. You are becoming a hub of information, the central node in a network of data about the king's physical state. One day, you're in your small supply chamber, carefully folding a freshly laundered stack of Flemish linen. The scent of lavender from the herb bundles hanging from the ceiling is thick in the air. Sir William enters and picks up one of the cloths. He inspects it, running the fabric between his thumb and forefinger. Good, he says, a rare word of praise. But we are running low. I have authorized a purchase from a merchant in Chipside. You will go and procure it. This is new. He's entrusting you with money. He hands you a small, heavy purse. Pay him no more than the agreed price, and get a receipt. This is your first interaction with the privy purse. The financial power you were promised. It feels significant, handing the king's money to buy the king's toilet costs. The absurdity is not lost on you. This is where a weird little tidbit of history comes in. While you are buying linen, the King of France, Francis I, had his own version of a groom of the stool. The porte-coton, who apparently used cotton, a far greater luxury at the time. There was an unspoken competition between courts not just in armies and palaces, but in the very fabric of their royal commodities. Your choice of linen is, in a tiny way, a matter of national pride. You made the trip into the city. The merchant, a portly man with shrewd eyes, knows exactly who you are. The moment you mention you are from the palace, his demeanor changes. He becomes obsequious, bowing and scraping. He sees the purse in your hand and his eyes glitter. You remember Sir William's instructions. You huddle, your voice more confident than you feel. You are not just a customer, you are an extension of the king's will. When you leave with the bolt of fine linen, having paid the correct price and with a signed receipt in your pocket, you feel a strange sense of accomplishment. Returning to the palace, you arrange the new cloths in your chamber. You have successfully managed your first task that went beyond water and waste. You have wielded the power of the king's purse. However small, you are no longer just the man who cleans the toilet. You are the man who provides for the toilet. It's a subtle distinction, but in the world of the court, where every role is minutely defined, it's a step up. You are beginning to understand that the tools of your trade are not just water and towels. They are logistics, finance, and information, and you are slowly, carefully, mastering them all. As you settle into the rhythm of your duties, you start to perceive the palace not as a single entity, but as a series of concentric circles, each one more exclusive than the last. The outermost circle is the great hall, bustling and public. Then come the various presence chambers and council rooms, where the business of the kingdom is debated. Deeper still is the privy chamber, the exclusive domain of the king's most trusted companions, and at the very heart of it all, the tiny, oak-paneled room where you do your most important work, is the king's private universe, the 御座间, the privy, the lavatory, whatever you call it. You realize it's the most exclusive, most powerful, and most honest room in England. Here, stripped of his crown, his robes of state, and his audience of bowing courtiers, the king is simply Henry. Amen. And it is in this space that you begin to see the true machinery of power at work. The room is small, and when the king is seated, he is a captive audience. There is nowhere for him to go. His attention, for those few minutes, is undivided, and he talks. At first, it's just grumbles, complaints about the damp weather, a curse about a tight boot, a sigh of frustration. You. Remembering Sir William's stern instruction, do not speak unless spoken to, remain a silent, efficient shadow. You hand him the cloth, you prepare the water. You are a ghost in the room. Then, one morning, after a particularly long night of feasting on council, the king is in a foul mood. He settles onto the close stool with a heavy sigh that seems to shake the small room. Hes rubbing his temples, his face pale. Mercy, he mutters, more to himself than to you. The cardinal thinks he can play me for a fool. He wants more money for his college at Oxford. More money, he scoffs. Does he think it grows on trees? The treasury is not a bottomless pit. You phrase. Your heart is pounding. He is not just complaining about the weather. This is state business. Cardinal Wolsey is the most powerful man in the kingdom, the Lord Chancellor, the king's right hand. To hear his name spoken with such venom, in this context, it's like a lightning strike. You say nothing. You simply continue your task. Your movement steady despite the tremor in your hands. You are invisible, and because you are invisible, you are safe to be near. This is the great paradox of your position. Your lowly, intimate task grants you access to conversations no one else is privy to. Dukes and earls in the council chamber hear the king's formal pronouncements. You hear the raw, unfiltered thoughts that precede them. You learn that the king is deeply frustrated with the pope's delay in granting his annulment. You learn which of his ambassadors he trusts and which he thinks is an incompetent fool. You hear him practicing arguments he will later use in council, testing them out on the only person who cannot argue back you. The privy becomes a confessional, a therapist's couch, and a strategic planning office all in one. Historians have long noted that the physical layout of Tudor palaces was a map of power. The further you were allowed into the king's private apartments, the more influence you had. You, by definition, Heaven all access pass to the final, most secret destination. You are the sole audience for the king's private monologue. One afternoon, the king is in a brighter mood. HES had a successful day of hunting. As you attend to him, HES humming a tune. Compton is getting married, he says suddenly, looking at you in the reflection of the polished wood paneling. He's talking about Sir William, your mentor, a good match, Lady Hastings' daughter. He'll have lands in the Midlands now. He pauses. A man in his position needs a good wife, and good land. It secures him. HES not just making small talk. HES thinking aloud about the nature of wealth, power, and loyalty. HES explaining, without realizing it, how the system works. How service is rewarded. He is, in his own way, teaching you. This is where a little-known fact about the job comes into play. The groom at the Stool often had his own seal, a lesser version of the king's, to stamp documents related to the privy purse. You are not just handling cash, you are beginning to authorize payments on the king's behalf for his personal expenses. The purchase of your linen cloths was the first, smallest step. Soon, you will be paying for everything from a new saddle for the king's horse to the silks for his latest mistress's gown. The privy is not just an office for secrets, it's an office of finance. You start to understand why Sir William is so respected and feared. He doesn't just know where the bodies are buried, figuratively speaking. He knows where the money is, literally. He knows who is in favor and who is not, based on the king's private mutterings. The academic debate here is fascinating. Was the groom's influence a deliberate tool used by the king, or an accidental byproduct of the living arrangements? Did Henry VIII know he was creating a powerful back channel for information and influence? A way to bypass his formal counsel, or did he simply want a trusted friend to help him use the toilet, and the power just naturally pulled around that person? The truth is likely somewhere in the middle. The king was no fool. He understood the power of proximity. As you finish your tasks for the day, cleaning and tidying the small room until it is perfect again, you look at the velvet-crowned commode. It seems less like a piece of furniture now and more like a source, a wellspring. The secrets of the entire kingdom flow into this room, and you are its keeper. You came to the palace seeking. What a better life, a bit of excitement. You have found something far more complex and dangerous. You are the guardian of the king's most private space, and that space, you now realize, is the true center of the English world. Your role is expanding. The initial shock of your core duty has subsided into a familiar, if still unpleasant, routine, but you're quickly learning that the title groom of the Stool is deceptively specific. The Stool itself is merely the anchor point for a much wider range of responsibilities that bind you ever closer to the king. You are becoming his shadow, a silent presence in the most unguarded moments of his day. The morning ritual no longer ends when the king leaves the privy. You are now part of the small, elite team that dresses him. This is an honor of the highest order. The dressing of the monarch is a formal, almost sacred ceremony. It's called the lever, a tradition that would become even more elaborate in the French court of Louis XIV. But the Tudors had their own version. Each item of clothing is presented in a specific order, held by a specific person. An earl might be given the honor of holding the king's shirt. A duke might present his doublet. Your job is more fundamental. You are there before the ceremony begins. You are the one who helps the king out of his nightshirt. You are the one who holds the fresh linen undergarments, the very first layer that touches the royal skin. Again, it's about intimacy. Before he is a king adorned in velvet and gold, he is a man in his smalls, and you are the one who attends to him. You learn the weight of his favorite fabrics, the way he likes his hose tied, the precise angle at which he fastens the jewel on his hat. You also become the keeper of his personal effects. The king, like any man, has pockets, and in those pockets are items he doesn't want handled by just any servant. A folded letter from his sister, a miniature portrait of a lady of the court, a new design for a warship scribbled on a piece of parchment, when he undresses at night. These items are passed to you for safekeeping. You have a small, locked chest in your quarters. It is becoming a treasure trove of royal secrets and whims. You never look at the contents. Your sense of self-preservation is far too strong for that, but you are aware of their existence. You are the custodian of the king's private world. One evening, as he is preparing for bed, he unclasps a heavy gold chain from around his neck. It has a single, intricately carved locket on it. Instead of handing it to the usual valet, he passes it directly to you. "Keep this safe," he says, his voice quiet, "and say nothing of it." His eyes meet yours in the mirror, and in that gaze is a clear, unspoken command. You nod, your heart thumping. You have just been entrusted with something that is clearly outside the normal protocol. You are being tested. Your discretion is being measured. This new level of trust comes with new responsibilities. Sir William Compton, your mentor, is increasingly occupied with his own rising fortunes, his new wife, his lands, his seat on various councils. He begins to delegate more and more of the day-to-day management of the privy purse to you. You are now in charge of a ledger. It's a heavy, leather-bound book, and in it, you record every penny of the king's personal expenditure. This is a mainstream historical point that cannot be overstated. The Groom of the Stool was effectively the king's private banker and chief financial officer. The national treasury, the exchequer, handled the kingdom's finances. The privy purse handled the king's, and the king often used his personal funds for state purposes, paying spies, funding secret military preparations, rewarding loyal followers. Your ledger is not just a household account book, it's a shadow budget for the entire realm. You learn to read the king's moods through his spending. A large, impulsive gift to a court musician, he is in a generous, happy mood. A sudden payment to a captain of the guard for special duties, he is feeling paranoid. A lavish order from a silk merchant, a new romance is blossoming. You can chart the emotional and political landscape of the court just by following the money. A strange but true aspect of your job is that you are also in charge of the king's entertainment budget. This includes everything from paying for jesters and commissioning plays to, more discreetly, funding the king's gambling debts. Henry is a notorious gambler. He loves cards and dice. A weird historical tidbit is that some records from Henry VIII's privy purse account show massive losses in a single night, sometimes hundreds of pounds. A fortune at the time, and who had to go and settle these debts. Quietly and without fuss, you are the one who has to hand over a heavy bag of coins to a smug-looking earl who bested the king at cards the night before. This makes you a popular figure with the king's gambling partners. But it also gives you a clear-eyed view of his very human flaws. Historians often debate the extent to which grooms of the stool, like William Compton or his successor Henry Norris, used this financial power for their own ends. The records show them becoming incredibly wealthy, acquiring lands and titles. Was this purely the result of royal favor? Or did they skim a little off the top? Did they use their insider knowledge of the king's spending to make shrewd investments? It's a question of creative accounting that is almost impossible to answer centuries later. The line between a royal gift and a personal transaction could be deliberately blurry. As you close the heavy ledger one night, the numbers swimming before your eyes, you realize your job title is almost a joke. Groom of the Stool. It sounds like the punchline to a vulgar story. But in reality, you are the king's dresser, his valet, his confidant, his personal banker, his secret keeper, and his debt collector. You are woven into the very fabric of his daily existence. More so than his wife. More so than his Lord Chancellor. The stool was just the key that unlocked the door. You now have the run of the entire house. Your unique position grants you access to a constant stream of highly specific, unusually personal data about the most important man in the kingdom. Long before the royal physicians are summoned with their leeches and their charts of the constellations, you are the first line of defense and diagnosis for the king's health. You have become, in effect, the royal menu's official, albeit gruesome, critic. Every day is a new data point. You become an expert in interpreting the The evidence, the color, the consistency, the frequency, these are not disgusting details to you anymore. They are information. They are vital signs. You learn to connect what the king eats with the results you observe hours later. Did the kitchen serve him that incredibly rich peacock pie with the gilded beak? You can predict, with almost unerring accuracy, that he will be sluggish and irritable the next morning. Did he stick to a simpler meal of roasted chicken and bread? He'll be in a far more agreeable mood. You start to keep a mental logbook. Spiced German wine leads to trouble. Plain English ale does not. Too many sugary marchpane creations from the kitchens result in a restless night, which you hear about from the page who guards his door. You are a walking, talking, 16th century health tracking app. The king himself might not know why he feels a certain way. But you do. You know his body's secrets better than he does. One morning, you notice something is amiss. The signs are subtle, but you've been trained by repetition. There is a slight change that suggests the king is unwell. You say nothing to him directly. That would be a catastrophic breach of protocol. A servant does not diagnose a king. Instead, you seek out Sir William. You find him reviewing some accounts in the Privy Chamber office. Sir, you begin. Your voice low. A moment. He looks up. His gaze sharp. What is it? You describe your observations in the detached, clinical language you are developing. You don't offer a diagnosis. You just present the data. He also complained of a sharp pain in his side after the tennis match yesterday. You add, remembering a stray comment the king had made while you were helping him with his boots. Sir William listens, his expression unreadable. He nods slowly. I see. You will mention to the master of the kitchens that the king has requested a simpler diet for the next few days. Broths, plain bread, boiled meats, no wine, and you will ensure he drinks more water. And the physicians, so you ask. He waves a dismissive hand. Not yet. We will observe. The physicians bring panic and leeches. Let us see if a change in diet will suffice. This is a profound moment. You have just influenced royal policy, albeit on a small, digestive scale. Your observation, passed up the chain of command, has altered the king's diet without him even knowing why. You have averted a potential illness, or at least managed it, without a single doctor being involved. This is the hidden power of your role. You are the gatekeeper not just to the king's presence, but to his very well-being. This episode highlights a mainstream historical understanding in an age before modern medicine. Preventative care was paramount, and the people closest to the monarch were their most important health monitors. A king's health was a matter of state security. A sick king could mean an unstable kingdom. The experience emboldens you. You start making proactive, subtle changes. You find excuses to have a pitcher of fresh water always available in the king's private rooms. You might accidentally misplace the box of rich, imported sweets he loves, suggesting a servant must have moved it. You are a dietary ninja, silently shaping the king's consumption habits for his own good. Here's a peculiar little fact: some of the more elaborate Tudor dishes were almost certainly recipes for indigestion. They loved using vast quantities of saffron, ginger, cloves, and sugar in savory dishes. A dish called spiced blancmange, for example, involved chicken, rice, sugar, and almond milk, a combination that sounds more like a dinner than a dinner. As the person on the receiving end of the digestive consequences, you would have had a very strong, vested interest in promoting a plainer menu. Of course, your influence has its limits. If the king demands venison pasty, he gets venison pasty. You can only nudge, not command. But your nudges are becoming more effective. The king, feeling better after a few days of your prescribed simple diet, even comments on it. I feel remarkably well, he announces one morning. Clear-headed, I should eat like this more often. He has no idea that this spell of good health was orchestrated by you. This leads to a fascinating and still debated question among historians: how much did the grooms of the Stool influence medical and dietary trends at court when a king adopted a certain habit? others would follow. If the king started drinking more water because his groom quietly ensured it was always at hand, did that subtly shift the drinking habits of the entire inner circle? Did your quiet manipulations have a ripple effect on the health of the English nobility? It's impossible to prove, but it's a tantalizing idea. Your influence wasn't just on the king, but through him, on the very culture of the court. You are no longer just cleaning up messes. You are preventing them. You are the silent, unseen guardian of the royal constitution. Your clinical observations in the privy have become your most valuable reports, more critical than any ambassador's dispatch from France. You are the king's weatherman, and the forecast, for now, is clear. The trust, once a tiny seed, is beginning to grow into a sturdy sapling. It's nurtured by your silence, your efficiency, and your uncanny ability to be exactly where you need to be. A moment before you are needed, the king has started to talk to you more directly. The monologues about his frustrations are slowly morphing into something that, if you were of equal rank, you might almost call a conversation. He asks you simple questions. Is it still raining? Did that shipment of Mohawks arrive? He doesn't necessarily care about your answer, but he's acknowledging your presence. He's getting used to you as a fixture, a piece of the privy's furniture that happens to be able to speak. Then comes the day when everything changes. It starts like any other. The morning ritual, the dressing ceremony, the quiet hum of the palace waking up. Later in the day, you are summoned. The king requires the closed stool. You gather your tools, the water, the cloths, and proceed to the small, familiar room. But this time, something is different. The king's mood is dark. A heavy, palpable anger radiates from him, so intense it feels like he is usually boisterous, even in his rages. This is a cold, simmering fury. He settles onto the stool. The silence in the room is absolute, heavy, then terrifying. You carry on with your duties, your movements slow and deliberate, trying not to make a single sound that could draw his attention. You keep your eyes down, focused on the task at hand. You are a ghost. You are invisible. He dares. The king hisses. The word slices through the silence. It's not directed at you, but at the empty space in front of him. He dares to defy me. Your blood runs cold. You know, from the whispers you've been gathering like a magpie, that the French ambassador had a difficult audience with the king this morning. The negotiations over a border dispute have stalled, but this level of fury is something new. King Francis thinks he can play his games. Henry continues, his voice a low, dangerous growl. He thinks his friendship with the emperor gives him a free hand. He clenches his fists. But I have a hand of my own to play. He falls silent again. You are barely breathing. This is not a complaint about a counselor, or a grumble about finances. This is the raw, untamed heart of foreign policy. This is the stuff of war. And then he does something he has never done before. He looks directly at you. His eyes, usually distant or preoccupied, are sharp and focused on your face. You, he says. Your name. He almost never uses your name. You are from the north. Are you not? You swallow hard. Your throat suddenly a desert. Yes, your majesty. Near the Scottish border. 2 days, right? Your majesty. He nods slowly, his mind clearly working. The Scots, he muses. They are always eager to cause trouble for a price. Francis sends them gold, and they raid our northern farms. He looks away, staring at the wall but seeing something much further away. But what if someone were to send them a message, a warning? What if their most troublesome border lords were to disappear? And there it is. He has just voiced a thought so treasonous, so dangerous, that if anyone else had heard it, they would be on their way to the Tower. Assassination. A state-sanctioned hit-on foreign soil. He has said it aloud, in this small, private room, to the one person whose very job description is to hear everything and say nothing. Why did he say it to you? This is a question historians would kill to have a definitive answer for. Some would argue it was a calculated test. He was pushing the boundaries of your trust, seeing if you would flinch, seeing if a whisper of this would leak out into the court. If it did, you would be destroyed, and he would know the limits of your discretion. Others argue it was a moment of pure, unthinking frustration, and his rage. He simply spoke his darkest thought aloud, and you just happened to be there. The psychology of a king is a complex thing. Was he seeking a form of absolution by confessing to someone who couldn't judge him, or was he simply so accustomed to your presence that he forgot you were a separate human being? You, of course, have no time for such analysis. You are in a state of controlled terror. Your mind is a blank slate. You show no reaction, no shock, no fear, no judgment. You are a stone wall. You simply wait. He seems to catch himself. The fury in his eyes recedes slightly, replaced by a cold, calculating look. He studies your face for a long moment. He is looking for any crack in your impassive facade. You give him nothing. You are the perfect servant. Finally, he grunts, the sound signifying the end of both the conversation and his time on the stool. He stands. You move forward to perform the final parts of your duty. Your hands miraculously steady. He leaves the privy without another word, the storm of his anger passing as quickly as it arrived. You are left alone in the small room, the echo of his words seeming to hang in the air. You have just crossed the threshold. Before today, you were a high-level servant, a confidant in matters of health and finance. Now, you are something else. You are a container for a secret that could topple alliances and start a war. A weird, morbid fact is that several plots against Henry VIII's life were hatched during his reign. But here, in his own privy, he was the one hatching a plot, and you were his sole confidant. You finish your cleaning, your hands moving on autopilot. Your mind is reeling. The trust the king has shown you is a terrifying thing. It's not a gift, it's a burden. It's a weight that you will have to carry, silently and alone. Every single day, you have just heard your first true secret of state, and the knowledge is as exhilarating as it is deadly. The secret you carry is a physical weight. You feel it when you walk through the crowded courtyards. You feel it when you lie in your bed at night. The king's dark words about the Scottish lords have changed your perception of everything. You no longer just see courtiers gossiping, you see potential spies. You no longer just hear idle chatter, you hear the faint echoes of conspiracy. The world has become sharper, more dangerous. And something else has changed. People are starting to look at you differently. It's subtle at first. A nod from a powerful baron who wouldn't have acknowledged your existence a month ago. A brief, appraising glance from the French ambassador as you pass in a corridor. They don't know what you know, but they know that you are there. You are present for the moments they are excluded from. You are the keeper of the king's private time, and that makes you a person of interest. The air around you seems to have thickened, and it carries a new scent of faint, unmistakable odor of power. It's a strange perfume, composed of equal parts fear, respect, and opportunism, and you are the one wearing it. The real shift becomes apparent at the door. Not your door, but the king's. The privy chamber is a fortress, and its entrance is the site of a constant, low-grade battle. Every day, a crowd of petitioners, nobles, and office seekers gathers in the antechamber rest, all of them desperate for a moment with the king. They buzz like flies, hoping a door will open, hoping to catch the king's eye as he passes. They lobby the gentlemen of the privy chamber. They bribe the pages. They do anything for an advantage. Previously, you were just part of the scenery, another servant moving through the halls. Now, you are a target. One afternoon, as you are leaving the king's chambers after a midday session, the Duke of Buckingham, one of the oldest, proudest, and most powerful nobles in the land, is waiting in the antechamber. He is surrounded by a small clique of his followers. But as you emerge, he turns his full attention to you. "Oh," he says, his voice a smooth, aristocratic drawl. "The king's good servant." You bow your head, murmuring a respectful, "Your Grace." You try to walk past, but he positions himself in your way. "His Majesty." The Duke continues, "Is he in good spirits today?" This is a loaded question. On the surface, it's a simple inquiry, but underneath, it's a probe. HES asking you to share insider information. He wants to know if this is a good day to ask the king for a favor. He desperately needs a grant of land he believes is rightfully his. You remember your training, discretion, invisibility. The king's spirits are his own. "Your Grace." You reply, your voice even and non-committal. "I am not fit to judge them." The Duke's eyes narrow slightly. HES not used to being stonewalled, especially by someone he considers little more than a body servant. But he can't show his anger. He can't afford to make an enemy of you. He forces a smile. Of course, a model of discretion. He gestures with a manicured hand. "A fine quality. The king is lucky to have you." He lets you pass. But you can feel his eyes, and the eyes of every other person in that room, burning into your back. This is the beginning of a new game. You are the doorman to the king's mind. People want to know his mood, his health, his private thoughts, and you are the only one with the key. You have something they all desperately want access. Herein lies a complex historical debate. Was the Groom of the Stool's power formal or informal? He had no official seat on the Privy Council. He could not cast a vote on matters of law. Yet, many historians argue his soft power was far more potent. The ability to choose whose name to mention to the king, or whose letter to place on top of a pile, was an incredible source of influence. His power wasn't written down in any charter, it was inherent in his proximity. A strange, related tidbit is the concept of body politics. In the Tudor court, the monarch's physical body was a symbol of the state. Its health, its functions, its very presence were political. Therefore, those who controlled access to the physical body like you were de facto political players. You didn't just smell of the privy, you smelled of power because the privy was, in a sense, an office of state. The scent of your newfound influence is strongest right after you've performed your duties. When you leave the king's private chambers, having just been in the inner sanctum, you are at your most potent. The courtiers seem to believe the king's aura of power might have literally rubbed off on you. They hover, they ask their subtle questions. They try to read your expression for clues. Your blank, impassive face becomes your greatest weapon. It makes them desperate. You learn to navigate this new reality. You are polite but distant. You are humble but unyielding. You never, ever share what happens in the privy. Your silence becomes your reputation, and the more silent you are, the more the courtiers believe you must know. They project their own hopes and fears onto your blank canvas. You are becoming a powerful figure not because of what you say, but because of what you don't say. Walking back to your own quarters, you catch your reflection in a pane of polished glass. You look the same face, the same clothes, but you feel entirely different. You carry the weight of state secrets and the burden of other people's ambitions. The job has stained you, not just with the physical reality of your tasks, but with the invisible, pervasive scent of power, and you are beginning to realize that it might be impossible to ever wash it off. The requests, once subtle probes about the king's mood, are becoming bolder. The courtiers have realized that you are not just a barometer of royal humor, you are a potential conduit. You are the one who stands beside the king when he is unguarded, when his mind is not shielded by the formalities of the court. A word from you, whispered at the right moment, could be worth 1,000 petitions. You have become a gatekeeper, not of a physical door, but of a far more important entrance, the gateway to the king's attention. The process begins informally. A courtier, Sir Thomas Boleyn, a man of sharp intellect and even sharper ambition, corners you in a quiet hallway. He doesn't offer you money, not yet. He starts with flattery. He praises your diligence, your loyalty, your discretion. He speaks of you as a man of rare character. You listen. You face a polite mask, knowing that this is just the preamble. The king, Boleyn says, lowering his voice, has been considering the appointment of a new ambassador to the Holy Roman Emperor's court. A vital role. He pauses, letting the importance of his words sink in. There are many candidates. Of course. But some of us feel that a man of true English grit is needed. Someone who will not be swayed by foreign pomp. Someone like my kinsman, Sir John. He looks at you, his eyes intense. If an opportunity were to arise, he continues, to simply mention Sir John's name, to remind His Majesty of his long and faithful service, it would be a great service to the kingdom. He is asking you to be his lobbyist, to use your privileged access to plant a seed in the king's mind. The request hangs in the air between you, a shimmering, dangerous thing. To agree is to step over a line. To refuse is to make a powerful enemy. You give him the same non-committal answer you give everyone. His Majesty's wisdom in these matters is profound. He will surely choose the best man for the role. You bow slightly and move on, leaving Boleyn with a frustratingly blank wall to talk to. But the requests keep coming. They are relentless. A bishop wants you to mention his nephew, a bright young man perfect for a role in the church administration. A general wants you to remind the king of the shoddy state of the coastal defenses he'd reported on months ago. Everyone has an agenda. Everyone wants you to be their voice. You are faced with a choice. You can remain a silent, neutral observer, a stone wall deflecting your requests. This is the safe path. Or you can begin to make choices. You can decide which messages to pass on and which to ignore. This is the path of power, and it is fraught with peril. The moment of decision comes unexpectedly. There's a young man at court, a poet and musician named Mark Smeaton. He is not of noble birth, a fact the snobbish courtiers never let him forget. But he is talented, and the king enjoys his music. He has composed a new piece, a beautiful ballad, but he can't get anyone to present it to the king. The gentlemen of the chamber dismiss him as a commoner. One day, Smeaton approaches you. He's nervous, almost trembling. He doesn't ask for a promotion or a grant of land. He just holds out a roll of sheet music. "Sir," he says, his voice barely a whisper, "if you should find the king in a good mood, if he asks for a song, perhaps you could remember this one. He expects nothing. He has none of the arrogance of the high-born lords. He is simply an artist hoping for an audience. You take the music. You make no promises." A few days later, the king is in an excellent mood. He has just won a significant sum at cards a debt you will have to discreetly settle later. He is in the privy, humming to himself. It's a moment of contentment. "I am tired of the old songs," the king says idly. "I need something new." And here it is, the opulent, the choice. You could say nothing, or you could take a risk. You think of the arrogant Duke of Buckingham, the scheming Sir Thomas Boleyn, all the powerful men who see you as a tool. Then you think of the hopeful, terrified face of the young musician. "Your Majesty," you say, your voice steady, "there is a new ballad by the young man, Smeaton. They say it is very beautiful." The king looks at you, intrigued. "Smeaton the musician, is he any good?" "I am no judge of music, sire," you reply ruthfully. "But his passion is sincere." "Sincere," you say. The king seems to consider this. "Very well. Have him brought to the privy chamber this evening. We shall hear this new song." That evening, Mark Smeaton, his face pale with a mixture of joy and terror, plays his ballad for the king. The king loves it. He declares Smeaton a genius and rewards him with a purse of gold and a permanent position in his private retinue. Smeaton's life has been changed forever, and you were the one who opened the door. This is a microcosm of the power you now wield. A word from you has elevated a commoner and, in a small way, thwarted the snobbery of the court. This is a key historical concept, the role of the new man in the Tudor court. Henry VIII famously liked to elevate men of lower birth based on merit and loyalty, often to the disgust of the old nobility. In this instance, you have acted as the king's talent scout. A weird, contrasting fact is that while you can make a career, you can also be the bearer of bad news. The groom of the stool was often the person who had to inform the king of the death of a friend or a distant family member, a task no one else wanted. You are the gatekeeper for both good fortune and sorrow. The incident is not unnoticed. The court sees that a word from you has a tangible result. Your stock rises. The petitioners become more desperate, their offers more explicit. You have learned a valuable lesson. You cannot help everyone. To do so would devalue your influence. You have to choose. You have to be selective. You have become the narrow gates, and you alone decide who is worthy to pass through. The power is terrifying, but a small, secret part of you finds it deeply, dangerously satisfying. You are no longer just an observer or a gatekeeper, you have become a library of secrets, bound in flesh and blood. Every whispered confession in the privy, every financial transaction in your ledger, every desperate request from a courtier, each one is a book on a shelf in your mind. The library is growing, and its contents are priceless, dangerous, and utterly confidential. You are the sole librarian, and the borrowing privileges are non-existent. The weight of this knowledge is immense. You have to develop a new kind of memory, a compartmentalized mind. In one part, you store the king's muttered frustrations about his wife, Queen Catherine, and her inability to produce a male heir. In another, you file away the fact that the Duke of Norfolk is secretly selling land to pay off his gambling debts, a sign of weakness he would kill to keep hidden. In yet another, you place the king's idle thought about a new design for a cannon that could change the face of naval warfare. Your mind is a mosaic of state secrets, personal shames, and royal whims. You are a walking, breathing paradox, a man of low birth who possesses knowledge that could ruin men of the highest station. This is the essence of your shadow power. It is not power you can wield openly. You cannot walk into the council chamber and announce, "The king is considering a new tax on wool." But you can use this knowledge to navigate the treacherous currents of the court. You know who is truly in the king's favor, not just who appears to be. You know who is financially stable and who is on the brink of ruin. You see the intricate, invisible web of alliances and rivalries that underpins everything. This personal knowledge gives you an almost supernatural advantage. When a courtier approaches you, you are not just seeing the man in front of you, you are seeing his entire file. You know his ambitions, his weaknesses, his secrets. This allows you to assess his request with a chillingly accurate clarity. Is he loyal? Is he a threat? Is helping him a wise investment of your limited influence? One evening, you are working late on the privy purse accounts. The palace is quiet. Sir William Compton, who has been increasingly distant as he manages his own vast estates, enters your small office. He closes the door behind him. "You are doing well," he says. It is the most direct praise he has ever given you. "The king is pleased with you. You are unobtrusive." Coming from him, unobtrusive is the highest compliment. "But I must give you a warning," he continues, his voice low and serious. "The things you hear, the things you know, they make you a target. There are men in this court who would do anything to know what is in your head. They will try to befriend you. They will try to intimidate you. They will send beautiful women to try and charm the secrets out of you." He gives you a hard look. "Trust no one. Not even me. Not completely. Your only loyalty is to the king." This is a stark, terrifying piece of advice. He is essentially telling you that you are alone. You are an island. This reflects a key historical reality of court life. Paranoia was the default setting. Alliances were temporary, and friendships were tools. The concept of a true, disinterested friend was a dangerous luxury. The most important thing, Sir William says, leaning closer, is to never write anything down. No diary, no notes. The only ledger you keep is the financial one, and it contains only numbers, no names or reasons. Your mind must be the only vault. This is a fascinating, unweirdly practical piece of historical tradecraft. The scarcity of written records from figures like the groom of the street OL is a source of immense frustration for historians. We have the financial accounts, but the context, the secrets, the juicy details, they were deliberately kept in memory alone, for security. They died with the man who held them. Your head is the most secure data storage device available in the 16th century. The debate among historians on this point is whether any grooms of the Stool ever broke this rule. Did one of them, somewhere, keep a secret diary, a coded journal, if such a document were ever discovered? It would be the historical equivalent of the Rosetta Stone for understanding the inner workings of the Tudor court. But as far as we know, they were all as discreet as Sir William advised. After he leaves, his words echo in the silent room. Trust no one. You look at the locked chest where you keep the king's personal trinkets. You look at the ledger filled with cryptic payments. You are the keeper of all this. But who keeps you? You are becoming a secret yourself. Your true thoughts, your own fears, your own ambitions, they must be buried deeper than any state secret. You must be a perfect, polished mirror, reflecting only what the king wants to see, and a perfect, silent vault for everything else. You realize that the job is consuming you. Your old self, the young man from the countryside, is fading away. In his place is this new creature, this court functionary whose personality is a carefully constructed facade. You have power. Yes, but the price is a profound and unshakable loneliness. You are the most informed man in England, and you have no one to talk to. The silence you are paid to keep is now the defining feature of your own life. The flattery and the subtle requests have not stopped, but a new element has entered the equation: money. Cold, hard, and undeniably persuasive. The courtiers, having realized that your ear is more valuable than a dozen formal petitions, have resorted to the most direct form of lobbying known to man. It happens for the first time on a damp Tuesday morning. You're walking through a less trafficked corridor, a shortcut you used to get from your quarters to the kitchens to inquire about the king's dinner menu. The Duke of Suffolk, Charles Brandon, intercepts you. Brandon is an interesting figure, H.E.S. the king's closest friend, his jousting partner, a bluff, hearty man who rose to prominence through his personal relationship with Henry, but he is also perpetually in need of cash. He greets you with a familiar slap on the back that is a little too hard, a little too friendly. There he is, the king's most diligent servant. He booms. He steers you into a small alcove, out of sight of the main corridor. His demeanor changes, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Listen, he says, I need a favor. A small matter. The king promised me the wardship of the young Lord Willoughby. A lucrative arrangement, but he has forgotten. His mind is on other things. The French, the Scots, the Queen. He trails off, waving a dismissive hand. You understand. You do understand. A wardship was a legal right granted by the king to a nobleman, giving him control over the lands and the marriage arrangements of a wealthy orphan until they came of age. It was basically a license to print money. If you could just find a moment, the Duke continues, a private moment, to remind him of his promise to his old friend Charles. He lets the request hang in the air. You prepare to give your standard, non-committal reply. But before you can speak, he presses something heavy into your hand. You look down. It's a small leather pouch, heavy with the unmistakable weight and clink of gold coins. For your troubles, the Duke says with a conspiratorial wink. A token of my gratitude, in advance. You stare at the pouch. It's one thing to accept a small gift of wine or a fine pair of gloves. That is part of the court's culture of gift-giving, but this is different. This is a bribe, a clear, unambiguous transaction, your services in exchange for gold. This is your first taste of what the court calls grey income money that isn't illegal. Precisely, but exists in the murky shadows of influence and favor. Accepting it is a Rubicon. To take the money is to formally acknowledge that your influence is for sale. To refuse it is to deeply offend one of the most powerful and well-connected men in the kingdom. He is the king's best friend. Offending him is a terrible career move. You hesitate for only a second. You think of your family back home, of their modest lands and their constant struggle to make ends meet. This pouch contains more money than your father makes in a year. With a slow, deliberate movement, you close your hand around the pouch and slip it inside your doublet. It feels warm against your chest. The Duke's face breaks into a broad grin. "Excellent," he says, tapping you on the back again. "I knew you were a sensible fellow." He walks away, leaving you alone in the alcove, your heart hammering against the pouch of gold. This practice was, historically, incredibly common, where outright bribery was frowned upon. The giving of gifts in expectation of a favor was the grease that kept the wheels of administration turning. Historians who study court documents are constantly trying to untangle the web of gifts, grants, and pensions to figure out who was paying whom for what. It was a system built on plausible deniability. It wasn't a bribe, it was a token of esteem. You didn't sell your influence, you were simply rewarded for your friendship. You feel a strange mixture of guilt, excitement, and fear. You have crossed a line, but you also feel a surge of power. The Duke of Suffolk, a man whose lineage stretched back for centuries, a man who married the king's own sister, had just paid you for your help. The social order has been turned completely on its head. A weirdly specific tidbit is that grooms of the Stool were often given their own apartments within the palace and a diet, meaning they were entitled to a certain number of dishes from the royal kitchen and an allowance of wine and beer. Their official income was respectable, but it was this unofficial, gift-based income that made them truly wealthy. You fulfill your end of the bargain. A few days later, while helping the king prepare for a hunt, you find your moment. The king is boasting about a horse the Duke of Suffolk has just given him. "He is a true friend, Your Majesty," you say quietly, "and a generous one. He is as loyal to his promises as he is to his king." "He is that." The king agrees, distracted by the choice of a riding boot. He was speaking of his great hope for the Willoughby wardship. You continue, your voice casual. He seems to believe it was a promise made. The king pauses. "The Willoughby boy, ah. Yes, I did mention that to him. Good of you to remind me." He turns to a nearby page. "Fetch a scribe. We shall make it official." It's done, with a few carefully chosen sentences. You have secured a fortune for the Duke of Suffolk, and you have secured your own reputation as a man who can get things done. The news travels fast in the echo chamber of the court. The Duke of Suffolk gets his wardship, and suddenly, the stream of petitioners at your door becomes a flood. The gifts they offer become more lavish. The pouches of gold become heavier. You are no longer just a librarian of secrets, you are a broker of power. And business is booming. You are becoming a very wealthy man, all because of what you hear, and what you choose to repeat, in the King of England's toilet. The palace, you've learned it, is not a monolith. It's a complex ecosystem. A jungle teeming with predators, prey, and creatures that can be either, depending on the day. Your newfound wealth and influence have made you a significant player in this jungle, but they have also painted a target on your back. You must now learn to navigate the intricate social landscape, to distinguish between a friendly smile and the bare teeth of a rival. You need to identify your allies and, more importantly, your enemies. Your allies, for the most part, are men like you, new men, elevated by the king's favor rather than by ancient bloodlines. Thomas Cromwell, a man with a lawyer's mind and a blacksmith's ambition, is one of them. He sees the world in practical terms of leverage and debt, and he recognizes your unique position as a powerful tool. He doesn't waste your time with flattery. He approaches you with clear, mutually beneficial propositions. He provides you with valuable information, a tip about a merchant who is about to go bankrupt, or a warning about a nobleman who has fallen out of favor, and in return, he expects you to keep his own name and the king's good graces. It is a clean, professional relationship. You are colleagues in the great, messy business of managing the king. Then there are the clients, like the Duke of Suffolk. They are not your friends, but their success is tied to your influence, so they have a vested interest in protecting you. They become a sort of informal bodyguard, deflecting rumors and speaking your praises in the right company. They are your allies of convenience. Your enemies are more subtle and far more dangerous. They are the old guard, the established noble families who see you as an upstart, a vulgar symptom of a world turned upside down. The Duke of Buckingham, whom you stonewalled weeks ago, is a prime example. He never confronts you directly. That would be beneath him. Instead, he employs 1,000 tiny cuts. His servants will accidentally jostle you in a corridor. When you enter a room, a hush will fall over the group he is with, followed by a quiet, shared smirk. He is trying to undermine you with ridicule, to remind everyone that despite your access, you are still the man who handles the king's toilet. The rivalry is a constant, low-level war of whispers and insults. He and his faction represent the past, you and Cromwell represent the future. This tension between the old aristocracy and the new, merit-based bureaucracy is a defining feature of Henry VII's reign. And you are standing right on the fault line. You learn to read the currents of the court. You watch who eats with whom in the great hall. You note who stands with whom during chapel. You pay attention to the subtle shifts in language and body language. Is a courtier's bow to you becoming a little stiffer? Is another's smile a little too wide? Paranoia is a survival skill. A particularly dangerous enemy emerges from an unexpected quarter. Sir Henry Norris. He is a gentleman of the Privy Chamber. Just like you, he is handsome, charming, a champion at the joust, and a favorite of the king. He sees your rising influence not just as a professional threat, but as a personal one. He believes he should be the king's most trusted confidant. He wants your job. His attacks are clever. He doesn't criticize you. Instead, he tries to outshine you. If you are discreet and silent, he is witty and entertaining. He makes the king laugh. He shares amusing gossip, never anything important, just harmless court chatter. He is trying to make himself indispensable in a different way, to make your quiet efficiency seem dull and plodding by comparison. The competition comes to a head over a seemingly trivial matter: the king's new hawk. The king has been given a magnificent Guy of Falkland, a prized bird, but it is ill-tempered and refuses to be trained. The royal falconers are at their wits' end. Norris, ever the showman, boasts that he can train the bird. He spends days trying, using all the known techniques. But the hawk remains wild and aggressive. The king is growing impatient. You, remembering your childhood in the country, recall a technique your grandfather, a humble man with no titles but a deep knowledge of animals, used to use. It involved a quiet, patient approach, using a soft voice and slow movements. It was the opposite of Norris's flashy, forceful methods. This is where a weird but relevant historical detail comes into play. A king's relationship with his animals, his horses, his dogs, his hawks, was deeply personal and often seen as a reflection of his own mastery and command. A king who could command a wild bird was seen as a man in control of nature itself. Norris's failure was a public embarrassment. One afternoon, in the privy, the king is complaining about the hawk. "I useless beast," he fumes, "proud and stubborn. I should have it killed." "This is your chance, your majesty," you say quietly. "Perhaps the bird does not need a master. Perhaps it needs a friend." The king looks at you, intrigued. "What nonsense is that?" "There is an old country way," you explain. "It requires patience, not force." You describe the method, the quiet repetition, the gentle handling. The king is skeptical, but he is also desperate. "Fine," he snouts. "You try it, but if you fail, I'll hold you responsible." For the next 2 days, in your spare moments, you work with the hop. You don't try to command it. You just sit with it, speaking in low tones, offering it food, never making a sudden move. Norris and his friends mock you openly. Look at the groom of the stool, whispering to a bird. Perhaps he's telling its state secrets. On the 3rd day, it happens. The hook, for the first time, eats from your hand. An hour later, it allows you to stroke its feathers. By evening, it is perched calmly on your gloved fist. You present the bird to the king. When he sees the once wild guy of Falkland sitting serenely on your arm, he is astonished, then delighted. He laughs, a booming, genuine laugh. Thy God, he roars. The quiet man tames the proud beast. There's a lesson in that. He shoots a sharp, meaningful look at Henry Norris, who is standing nearby, his face a mask of fury and humiliation. You have won the battle. You have proven that you're quiet. Observant nature has its own power, but you have also won a truly dangerous enemy. Norris now hates you with a burning passion. The jungle of the court has just become a little more treacherous. You have an ally in Cromwell, a pack of clients who depend on you, and a sworn enemy who will stop at nothing to see you fall. Your quiet life is well and truly over. Your influence, once a subtle undercurrent, is now a recognized force within the palace walls. Dukes and bishops seek your counsel, or at least your ear. But there is one person whose reaction to your rise is more complex and far more unnerving than any of the overtures from the male courtiers. That person is the Queen. Queen Catherine of Aragon is a woman of immense dignity and unshakable piety. She is the daughter of the legendary Ferdinand and Isabella of Spain, a princess from birth, and she carries herself with the quiet assurance of someone who has never had to question her own importance. For years, she was the center of the king's world, his respected wife and a savvy political advisor in her own right. But her failure to produce a male heir has become a cloud over her head, a cloud that grows darker with each passing year. Her power is waning, and she knows it, and she sees you. She sees you, a man of no breeding, gliding silently in and out of the king's most private chambers. She sees you at the king's side in moments she is no longer privy to. She doesn't see a servant, she sees a symptom of her own declining influence. Her disapproval is not overt. It is never a harsh word or a public slight. It is far more chilling. It is in her eyes. When you pass her in the chapel or a grand corridor, her ladies-in-waiting will part to let her through. She will incline her head in a gesture of acknowledgement so slight it is almost imperceptible. But her eyes, dark and intelligent, will rest on you for a moment too long. In that gaze, you see a mixture of things: contempt for your lowly origins, suspicion of your true role, and a deep, weary sadness. She is looking at one of the architects of a new world that has no place for her. The tension is palpable because you are at the heart of the king's greatest, most secret obsession, his desire for annulment. The great matter, as it is known. You hear the king's rants about it in the privy. You record the payments from the privy purse to scholars tasked with finding biblical justifications, 2 messengers carrying secret letters to Rome. You know more about the state of the king's efforts to discard his wife than almost anyone, perhaps even more than the queen herself. You are complicit in the slow, agonizing dismantling of her life. This is a key historical point. The court was splitting into factions. The Aragonese faction, loyal to Catherine and the old religion, and the Boleyn faction, supporting the rise of Anne Boleyn and the king's quest for a new wife. You are, by virtue of your proximity to the king, firmly in the Boleyn camp, whether you like it or not. One day, you are delivering a message from the king to a secretary working in a small office near the queen's apartments. As you leave, you come face to face with her. She is not surrounded by her usual retinue, but by just one trusted lady-in-waiting. There is no escape. She stops and addresses you directly. A rare and terrifying event. Her voice is calm, but it carries the authority of a lifetime of command. You are with my husband at all hours, she says. It is not a question, it is a statement of fact. I serve His Majesty as he commands. Your Grace. You reply, your head bowed, your eyes fixed on the floor. He is troubled, she says. His soul is troubled. The path he is being encouraged to walk is a dark one, filled with sin and error. She is not speaking to you as a servant, but as a Christian, one soul to another. She is trying to appeal to your conscience. God does not bless a union born of pride and lust. You are near to Him. You have a duty, not just to your king, but to your God, to remind Him of His true wife and His immortal soul. It is an impossible position. The Queen of England is asking you to act as her agent, to lobby her own husband on her behalf. To essentially commit political suicide. To agree is unthinkable. To refuse her directly is an insult of monumental proportions. You choose your words with the care of a man walking through a minefield. My only duty is to His Majesty's comfort and health, your Grace. Matters of state and so law for the king and his councillors. I am but a humble servant. Her eyes harden. The brief flicker of hope, of finding a potential ally in the enemy camp, is extinguished. She sees you now not as a man with a conscience, but as a tool, a creature of the king, deaf to any higher calling. I see, she says, the words as cold as ice. A humble servant. She sweeps past you, the rustle of her heavy velvet gown sounding like a sigh of defeat. The brief encounter leaves you shaken. You have seen the human cost of the king's ambition up close. Catherine is not just a political problem, she is a woman in profound pain, fighting for her marriage, her daughter's legitimacy, and her own identity. A weird and poignant detail from this period is that even as Henry was trying to divorce her, he continued to pay for Catherine's lavish household from the public purse. The accounts show vast sums spent on her clothes, food, and servants. It was a strange contradiction. He was discarding her as a wife, but still respecting her as a princess. Historians still debate whether this was a sign of a lingering guilty conscience, or simply a political necessity to avoid antagonizing her powerful nephew, the Holy Roman Emperor. As you walk away, you feel the weight of the Queen's gaze on your back. It is not the envious glare of a rival courtier or the suspicious look of an ambassador. It is something deeper, more profound. It is the look of righteous judgment. You have chosen your side in this war, not out of conviction, but out of necessity. You are bound to the king, for better or for worse, and you have just earned the quiet, dignified contempt of a good woman. In the silent, moral ledger of your own soul, you know it's a debt you will never be able to repay. Loyalty, you've learned, is the most valued currency at court. The king demands it. Your allies trade in it, and your enemies seek to question it. So far, your loyalty has been proven through silence and discretion, but a time is coming when you will be asked to prove it with action. You will be asked to get your hands dirty, not just in the literal sense your job requires, but in the moral sense. The request comes not in the privy, but in the king's private study late one night. The room is filled with maps and books. The air thick with the smell of old parchment and sealing wax. The king is agitated. H.E.S. pacing back and forth in front of the fireplace, his heavy frame casting a dancing, monstrous shadow on the wall. He has been trying for weeks to secure a confession from a friar named Peter, who has been preaching openly against the king's divorce, calling him a new Ahab and Damnable Jezebel. The friar is popular with the common people, and his words are dangerously close to treason. But he is clever and refuses to say anything under interrogation that would allow him to be legally executed. He mocks me, the king growls, slamming his fist on a heavy oak table. The man lies under my protection, eats my bread, and yet he sharpens his tongue against me in every pulpit. Cromwell and his lawyers can't touch him. They say they have no proof of malicious intent. The king scoffed. Intent? I can see his intent in his smug, pious eyes. He stops pacing and turns to you. You have been standing silently by the door, a living piece of furniture. I need this to end, he says, his voice low and cold. This friar is a festering wound. He encourages the Queen's obstinacy. He gives the people ideas. He needs to be silenced. You wait. Your blood turning to ice. You know what's coming. Cromwell cannot act officially. The king continues. His hands are tied by the law. The Duke of Norfolk cannot act. He is too visible, too clumsy. It would look like what it is, a nobleman crushing a man of God. It means to be quiet. It means to look like an accident, or a robbery gone wrong. He is not asking you to do it yourself. You are far too valuable, too close to the king to be risked. But he is asking you to arrange it, to use your network, to dip into the privy purse, the secret fund that pays for spies and other special projects, and hire men who are not afraid of dirty work. He is ordering you to orchestrate a crime. This is a new and terrifying frontier. It's one thing to pass along a message or accept a bribe. It's another thing entirely to arrange for a man to be beaten, or worse. This is not about influence, it's about enforcement. Brutal, off-the-books enforcement. Your mind races. To refuse is not an option. It would be a confession that your loyalty has limits. It would be the end of you. The king would find someone else, and you would be discarded, at best sent back to your muddy field, at worst sent to the Tower for knowing too much. To agree is to step into a world of violence and sin from which there is no return. You look at the king. His face is a mask of royal certainty. He believes he is in the right. In his mind, this friar is a threat to the stability of the kingdom, a traitor hiding behind a cassock. The king is the nation, and any threat to him is a threat to England itself. He is not asking you to commit a crime, he is asking you to perform a necessary act of statecraft. I understand, Your Majesty, you say. Your voice is a dry whisper. He nods, satisfied. There is a man, he says, a former soldier who now works the docks. Captain Bain. He is reliable in such matters. Cromwell knows of him. Pay him well. Ensure he understands that there must be no link back to the court, to anyone. The king has already thought it through. He has the target, the method, and the contractor. He just needs a paymaster and a manager who is completely discreet. He needs you. This is the moment where the groom of the Stool's role as the keeper of the king's secret finances becomes its most sinister. The same hand that pays for the Queen's new gowns and the jester's salary will now sign off on a payment for a back-alley beating. This kind of covert action is a subject of intense debate among historians. How often did it happen? Official records, for obvious reasons, do not exist. There's no ledger entry for beating up a troublesome friar. The evidence is circumstantial: a sudden disappearance, an unsolved crime, a timely accident. Many historians believe that a regime like Henry's, which was facing immense internal and external pressure, must have relied on such informal methods of control. The dirty tricks department was a necessary, if unspoken, part of the government. A bizarre but true fact is that the line between state security and the king's personal grudges was non-existent. A man who insulted the king's new mistress could be seen as just as much of a threat as a spy from France. The king's ego and the nation's security were one and the same. The next day, you find Captain Bain. He is a mountain of a man with dead eyes and a network of scars on his face. You meet him in a filthy, noisy tavern by the river, a world away from the perfumed halls of Hampton Court. You don't state the mission directly. You speak in code, in hypotheticals. If a certain person were to have an unfortunate accident, how much would it cost to ensure his silence? Bain understands immediately. He names a price. It is shockingly high, but you don't haggle. You hand over a purse heavy with royal gold. No names are mentioned. No papers are signed. It is a transaction based on a shared, unspoken understanding of violence. You walk away from the tavern feeling sick to your stomach. The cold river air feels clean compared to the filth of the business you have just concluded. You have crossed a line. You are no longer just a passive container of secrets. You are an active participant. You have used the king's money and the king's authority to arrange an act of brutality. You have proven your loyalty. but you have stained your soul in the process. The path back to the simple, honorable man you once were is now completely and irrevocably gone. The dirty deed is done. Word reaches the court a few days later, passed along in hushed tones. The troublesome friar, Peter, was found in an alleyway, badly beaten. His leg broken. He survived. But his spirit and his voice were shattered. He will not be preaching against the king again. No one officially knows who did it. The city guard calls it a random robbery. But everyone in the inner circle, from Cromwell to the Duke of Norfolk, knows the truth. They don't have proof, but they know the king's will has been done, and when they look at you, there is a new glint in their eyes, a mixture of fear and respect. You are no longer just the man with the king's ear, you are the man who can execute his darkest wishes. This new reputation changes your relationship with the king. The bond of trust, forged in secrecy and cemented by crime, is now stronger than ever. He begins to rely on you not just for practical tasks, but for something more subtle, emotional regulation. You are becoming the handler for a creature of immense power and unpredictable moods. You are learning how to soothe the lion. This is a skill you develop out of pure necessity. The king's temper is legendary. He can go from jovial to murderous in the span of a heartbeat. His rages are terrifying, not just because he is the king, but because he is a man of immense physical strength. When he is angry, the very air in the room crackles. Courtiers and counselors tremble before him, but you can't afford to tremble. You have to be there, right next to him, in the eye of the storm. You learn to read the signs with the precision of a seasoned sailor reading the weather. It's not just what he says, it's the tiny, almost imperceptible cues, the way he clenches his jaw, the slight flare of his nostrils, the pitch of his voice when he calls for his wine. You even learn to read him by scent. A strange, sharp odor of frustration seems to emanate from his skin when he is under stress. You are a king, talking biosensor, calibrated to a single human being. Your primary tool for managing him is not reason or argument. It is destruction. When you see the storm clouds gathering, you learn to deploy a conversational lightning rod. You have a mental arsenal of safe, neutral topics you can introduce at a moment's notice. One afternoon, the king is fuming about a dispatch from his ambassador in Spain. The emperor is making trouble again. The king is pacing the privy, kicking at a small footstool. An outburst is imminent. This is not the time to offer a political opinion. This is the time to change the subject entirely. Your Majesty, you say, your voice calm and even. The new Italian greyhound has arrived. They say she's the fastest in all of Christendom. The king stops his pacing. Faster than my dog. Balthazar, he demands, his anger momentarily diverted. Some of the handlers are wagering on it. You reply, fanning the tiny flame of his competitive spirit. They plan to race them tomorrow. They do. Do they? The king's mind is now off the emperor and on the race. Fools. Balthazar will crush her. I'll wager £20 on it. The storm has passed. You have successfully redirected the lion's attention from a state affair to a dog race. This role as a royal mood manager is one that historians find fascinating. Was it a recognized part of the job? Almost certainly not. But it was a necessary one. A king's bad mood could have real-world consequences. A decision made in anger could be a disastrous one. A courtier who could reliably diffuse that anger was an invaluable asset. This is the art of managing up at its most extreme. A weird, but illustrative tidbit: Henry VIII had a documented fear of illness and plague. When plague broke out in London, he would often retreat from the city with a very small, select group of attendants. The Groom of the Stool was always in this inner circle. In moments of royal fear and paranoia, you would be one of the few faces the king trusted to see. Your ability to remain calm in a crisis was not just a convenience, it was a requirement. You also learn the power of comfort. You ensure the fire in his chambers is always burning just right. You make sure his favorite spiced wine is ready after a long, frustrating council meeting. You discover he finds the scent of burning applewood calming. so you make sure there's always a supply for his fireplace. These are small, almost maternal acts of care. You are not just his servant, you are his comfort animal. This creates a strange and complex dependency. The king, a man who prides himself on his strength and self-reliance, becomes subconsciously dependent on you for his own emotional stability. He may not even be aware of it, but he knows that when you are around, things feel calmer, more orderly. The rest of the court sees it, too. They learn to watch you to know how to approach the king. If they see you looking calm and relaxed, they know it's safe to approach. If they see a subtle tension in your posture, they know to keep their distance. You have become the living signal flag for the ship of state. It's a bizarre and exhausting role. You are a therapist, an animal handler, and a courtier all rolled into one. You sue the man who holds the power of life and death over everyone you know, including yourself. Your success is measured in non-events, the rages that don't happen, the rash decisions that aren't made. It's a silent, invisible, and utterly vital form of power. You are the lion tamer, and so far, you haven't been mauled. But you know that every single day, you are putting your head in the lion's mouth. Your role as the king's unofficial health monitor, once a passive matter of observation, has evolved into something far more active and influential. The incident with the king's diet was just the beginning. You have become the single most reliable source of information about the royal body. And in the Tudor court, the royal body is the body politic. Your observations now carry more weight than the official pronouncements of the College of Physicians. The royal doctors are men of great learning and status. They dress in dark robes, speak Latin, and consult astrological charts before making a diagnosis. They believe the body is governed by humous blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile, and that illness is caused by an imbalance between them. Their cures involve bleeding, purging, and prescribing foul-tasting concoctions based on arcane theories. The king, for all his intelligence, believes in this system, but he also believes in results, and the physicians rarely provide them. You, on the other hand, operate on a different principle: direct evidence. You deal in data, not theory. Your laboratory is the closed stool, and your reports are based on the tangible outputs of the king's system. A clear example of your growing influence comes when the king suffers from a recurring ailment, a painful ulcer on his thigh, a lingering injury from a long-ago jousting accident. When it flares up, he is left in agony, his temper explosive, and the entire court holds its breath. The physicians descend like a flock of crows. They poke and prod, they consult their books, and they prescribe painful poultices that do little but irritate the wound further. Their ultimate solution, as always, is bleeding, to draw out the bad humors they believe are causing the inflammation. The king hates being bled. It leaves him weak and pale. One afternoon, after a particularly aggressive session with the leeches, the king is in a black mood, complaining that the cure is worse than the disease. He is in his privy, and you are attending to him. They are butchers, he grumbles, gesturing vaguely towards the main chamber where the physicians are packing up their instruments. They drain the life out of me and call it medicine. You see your opening. It's a risk, but a calculated one. Your Majesty. You begin, your voice low and respectful. When I was a boy, my grandfather had a horse with a similar affliction. A wound on its leg that would not heal. The king grunts. Am I a horse now? No, your Majesty. But the old woman who tended our animals, she had a simple remedy. She would not let anyone touch the wound. She kept it clean with boiled water and covered it with a simple cloth soaked in honey. The king looks at you, a flicker of interest in his eyes. Honey. She said it sealed the wound from the bad air and drew out the corruption. You explain. This is, by a remarkable coincidence, not far from the modern understanding of honey's antibacterial properties, a piece of folk wisdom that was far more effective than the official medicine of the day. This is a classic example of practical, traditional knowledge versus theoretical, academic knowledge. Folk nonsense, The king mutters, but you can see he is thinking. The physician's complex theories have failed him. Perhaps a simple solution is the answer. The next time the wound troubles you, "Your Majesty," you say, pressing your advantage gently. "Perhaps we could try the simple way first, before the physicians are summoned. If it fails, they can be called at any time." This is a brilliant political move. You are not challenging the physicians directly. You are merely suggesting an alternative first step, giving the king a sense of control. A few weeks later, the ulcer flares up again. The king, remembering your conversation, summoned you instead of his doctors. "All right, horse doctor," he says, with a hint of amusement in his voice. "Let us try your witch's remedy." With trembling hands, you clean the wound as you described. Using water you boiled yourself, and apply a clean linen dressing soaked in the finest honey from the royal kitchens. You are terrified. If this goes wrong, if the wound gets infected, you will not just be dismissed, you could be accused of poisoning the king. But it works. Within a day, the inflammation is reduced. The pain subsides. The king is able to walk without a severe limp for the first time in weeks. It is a small, quiet miracle. He never mentions it to the physicians. It becomes your shared secret. From that day on, you are the first consultant on the matter of the royal leg. You have, in this one specific area, completely displaced the king's official medical advisors. Historians are fascinated by this dynamic. Did Henry VIII secretly distrust his doctors? The evidence suggests he was a product of his time and believed in the humoral theory. However, he was also a pragmatist. If a folk remedy from his Groom of the Stool worked better than a doctor's prescription, he would use it. This creates a fascinating tension between the formal, state-sanctioned medical system and the informal, results-based healthcare you provide. You are now, essentially, the king's personal nurse and primary care provider. Your daily reports from the privy are no longer just for your own information. You are expected to share any anomalies directly with the king. You might say, "Your Majesty seems to be retaining water today," or "the richness of the French banquet does not seem to agree with your system." You are the king's personal health app, a walking, talking Fitbit with a 16th century vocabulary. Your power is not absolute. If the king were to fall gravely ill, the physicians would be summoned immediately. But for the day-to-day management of the royal body, you are the one in charge. Your simple, evidence-based observations have proven more valuable than all the Latin and astrology in the world. You have made yourself indispensable in the most fundamental way possible. You are the keeper of the king's health. The rewards for your unique and indispensable service are no longer just covert pouches of gold from desperate courtiers. The king himself, pleased with your loyalty, your discretion, and your surprisingly effective medical advice, begins to reward you on a scale that transforms your life entirely. You are, against all odds, becoming one of the wealthiest men in England. The process is gradual, but relentless. It begins with your formal salary being increased. Then you are granted a pension, an annual stipend paid directly from the king's own purse, for special services. This is all recorded in your own ledger, a strange feedback loop where you are the one documenting your own rising fortunes. But the real wealth in Tudor England isn't in coin, it's in land, and the king is the kingdom's ultimate landlord. One day, he summons you to his study. He is in a magnanimous mood, having just signed a favorable treaty with a minor German prince. "I have been thinking," he says, gesturing to a large map of England spread out on his table. "You have served me well. A man of your standing needs a place of his own, a proper estate." He taps a finger on a spot in the green, rolling hills of Kent, the manor of Blackwood. It has become available. The previous owner chose the wrong side in a dispute. This is a chillingly casual reference to a nobleman who was recently executed for treason. His lands forfeited to the crown. In the Tudor world, one man's tragedy is another man's opportunity. It is yours, the king says simply. The house, the fields, Lieutenants, a reward for your loyalty. You are stunned into silence. I matter. You, the second son of a minor gentleman, are now the lord of your own estate. You will have tenants who owe you fealty. You will have an income from rents and crops. You have just leapt up the social ladder in a single bound. This is the ultimate display of royal favor, a public declaration of your importance. The ownership of Blackwood Manor is recorded, official, and undeniable. This was the primary way the king built his new aristocracy. He would take land from the old, troublesome nobles and grant it to his loyal new men. It was a brilliant strategy that reshaped the political landscape, creating a class of landowners who owed everything to the king and were therefore utterly loyal to him. You are a living embodiment of this policy. With the land comes other, more subtle forms of wealth. You are granted the lucrative license to import all the sweet wine from Gascony for the court, a monopoly that allows you to take a cut of every cask. You are given the wardship of a wealthy heiress, just as the Duke of Suffolk was, giving you control of her fortune. The streams of income multiply. You are no longer just comfortable, you are rich. You have more money than you know what to do with. You hire your own steward to manage your estates, your own clerks to track your investments. You are becoming a business empire of one. Here's a bizarre detail of the system. Your position as groom of the stool also meant you were often given the king's old clothes. This might sound like a trivial perk, but the king's garments were made of velvet, silk, and cloth of gold, often studded with jewels. They were phenomenally expensive. Receiving a gift of a royal double was like being handed a car today. You could wear it to show off your status, or you could have it discreetly taken apart and sell the materials for a huge profit. You are literally wearing your wealth. Naturally, your new status changes everything. You build a new wing on your family home back in the country, transforming it from a modest gentleman's house into a mansion. Your parents are bewildered, proud, and slightly terrified by your success. Your older brother, who inherited the main title, is now the poorer of the two of you. A situation that creates a quiet, unspoken tension between you. At court, you move into a larger, more luxurious suite of apartments. You have your own servants now. You wear clothes made of the finest materials, not just the king's hand-me-downs. You look, to all outward appearances, like one of the great lords of the realm. But there is always a catch. The Duke of Norfolk, a man of ancient and impeccable lineage, sees you at a court banquet, dressed in your fine new velvet. He looks you up and down, his lip curling in a slight sneer. A man can be dressed in a lord's clothes, he says, just loud enough for those around you to hear, but he still smells of his work. The insult cuts deep, because it contains a kernel of truth. No matter how much land you own or how much gold you accumulate, to the old guard, you will always be the man who rose to power through a disgusting and lowly job. Your origins are a stain they will never let you forget. Historians often debate the social mobility of the era. Was it truly possible for a man to rise from obscurity to the highest ranks of the nobility? Your story suggests it was. But with a significant asterisk. You could acquire the wealth and the titles of a lord, but you could not easily acquire the innate, unquestioned respect that came with being born into that world. You would always be new money, an outsider who had bought his way in. So you live in a state of contradiction. You are a man of immense wealth and power, but you are also a man who is, in some circles, an object of ridicule. You have a country estate, but your real office is a small room with a velvet-turned toilet. You are one of the most successful men in England, a testament to the king's generosity, but you are also a constant reminder of the bizarre, messy, and deeply personal nature of Tudor power. Success in the royal court is a zero-sum game. For every person who rises, another must fall or be pushed aside. Your own ascent has been swift and spectacular, but the higher you climb, the more people there are below you who covet your position. The king's favor is a warm, brilliant sun, and everyone wants to stand in its light. You now face a new and insidious threat, not from an old guard enemy like the Duke of Norfolk, But from a young, ambitious courtier who sees you not as an obstacle, but as a blueprint. He wants to be the next you. His name is Edmund. He is the third son of a respectable but unremarkable family, much like you once were. He is handsome, clever, and possesses a boundless, naked ambition that you recognize immediately because it mirrors your own from years ago. He has secured a junior position in the Privy Chamber, a role that allows him to be seen by the king, but not to be noticed, and he is studying you. You catch him watching you when you are in conversation with a courtier. You'll see him in the background, his head tilted, trying to listen. When you walk through the palace, you'll sometimes get the sense that you are being followed, only to turn and see him disappearing into an alcove. He is learning your routines, your mannerisms, your network. His strategy is one of imitation. He adopts your style of dress, elegant but sober, never flashy. He cultivates a quiet, discreet demeanor, speaking little but always with an air of thoughtful gravity. He is trying to present himself as another you, a potential replacement, should the original model ever falter. The competition is subtle, a silent war fought in the corridors and antechambers. It begins with small things. You have made it your business to always know the latest news from the continent, to be able to answer the king's idle questions. One morning, the king asks about a rumor of a skirmish on the French border before you can answer. Edmund, who happens to be standing nearby, steps forward. Your Majesty, he says, bowing low, my cousin's letter, arrived by courier this very morning, speaks of it. It was a minor incident, provoked by a drunken captain. The French have already sent their apologies. He provides a perfect, concise summary. The king is impressed. Well done, young man, he says. You are well informed. Edmund has beaten you to the punch. He has demonstrated that he, too, can be a valuable source of information. It's a small victory for him, but a clear shot across your bow. He then begins to court your allies. He knows you are close to Cromwell. He finds ways to be useful to Cromwell's assistants, running errands, copying documents, making himself indispensable in small ways. He is trying to insert himself into your network, to make himself a part of the machinery you have built. The most dangerous front in this silent war is, of course, the king himself. Edmund knows he cannot get close to the king in the privy that is your sacred territory, so he finds other ways. He learns that the king has a passion for theology. Edmund, who spent time at Cambridge, begins to casually discuss complex points of scripture with other courtiers, but always within earshot of the king. He is showcasing his intellect, presenting a skill that you, with your more practical country upbringing, do not possess. The situation is a classic example of the precarious nature of court favor. As a historical principle, a monarch, especially an absolutist one like Henry, always needed to have alternatives. It was never wise to let one servant become too powerful or irreplaceable. A wise courtier always knew that his replacement was likely already being groomed in the wings. Your challenge is to make sure the understudy never gets to take the stage. You could try to destroy him. A word from you in the right ear could have him sent to a dull, remote posting, far from the sound of the king's presence. But that carries its own risks. A failed attack would show weakness, and a successful one might look like paranoia, as if you are afraid of the competition. The king values confidence, not insecurity. So you play a more subtle game. You don't try to crush him, you try to control him. You decide to use his ambition to your own advantage. One day, you summon him to your apartments. He arrives, his face a perfect mask of polite deference. But you can see the wariness in his eyes. He doesn't know if this is a promotion or an execution. You offer him a glass of wine. Edmund, you begin. Your tone friendly but firm. I have been watching you. You are a man of talent and ambition. These are qualities I admire. He murmurs a thank you, unsure where this is leading. The court is a complex place. You continue. A man can rise quickly, but he can fall even faster. What a man needs are powerful friends. You let that hang in the air. I could be such a friend to you. I have the king's trust. I can open doors for you. In return, I require only one thing: absolute loyalty. To the king, and to me. You are offering him a deal. Stop trying to replace me, and I will help you rise alongside me. Become my lieutenant instead of my rival. It is a power play, an offer he can't realistically refuse. To reject your patronage would be to declare himself your open enemy. A fight he knows he cannot win. A strange but true aspect of the Tudor court was this system of patronage. Power was like a pyramid. The king was at the top, and his chief ministers and favorites like you were just below. They, in turn, had their own network of followers and clients below them. Edmund was trying to build his own pyramid. You are forcing him to become a block in yours. He is smart enough to understand the offer immediately. His face relaxes, the wariness replaced by a calculating relief. He kneels, a theatrical gesture of fealty. You honor me, sir, he says. I am your man. You have neutralized the threat. For now, you have turned a rival into a subordinate. He will now work for you, gathering information, keeping an eye on your enemies. But you are not a fool. You know his ambition has not disappeared, it has just been redirected. You will have to watch him constantly. You have won this round. But the Game of Thrones in the Tudor court never truly ends. There is always someone younger, hungrier, and more ruthless, waiting in the shadows for you to make a single mistake. The political landscape of the court is in constant flux, but nothing causes a seismic shift quite like the arrival of a new queen. You have witnessed the slow, agonizing decline of Queen Catherine. Now, you stand at the epicenter of the earthquake that is Anne Boleyn. The great matter is resolved not by the Pope, but by the king's own declaration. He has broken with Rome, declared himself supreme head of the church in England, and married the woman for whom he has turned his kingdom upside down. You, more than almost anyone, have had a front row seat to this revolution. You heard the king's initial whispers of infatuation. You handled the secret love letters. You paid the messengers and the propagandists from the privy purse. You are a creature of the new regime, inextricably linked to the Boleyn faction. Your fortunes are tied to hers. Anna's queen is a very different entity from the hopeful mistress. She is intelligent, quick-witted, and possessed of a fiery, often volatile, temper. She is also deeply aware of the precariousness of her position. She has not won the hearts of the people, many of whom still see her as a home wrecker and Catherine as the true queen. Her only real power comes from the king's continued obsession with her. Your relationship with the new queen is complex. You are, on one hand, a natural ally. You both owe your position to the king's will and the downfall of the old order. Her father, Thomas Boleyn, whose request for a promotion for his kinsman you once fielded, is now the powerful Earl of Wiltshire. Her brother, George, is a leading light in the Privy Chamber. You are part of their circle. But there is also a tension. Anne is proud and demanding. She expects to be the sole center of the king's universe. And she is intensely jealous of anyone who has a close, private relationship with him. And no one has a relationship more private than yours. She sees you not as a rival for his affection, but as a rival for his attention and his secrets. She cannot attack you openly. You are too useful and too trusted by the king, but she makes her displeasure known in small ways. She might interrupt you when you are speaking quietly with the king, inserting herself into the conversation with a bright, brittle laugh. She will occasionally make a pointed joke about the secrets men share in their private chambers, a clear jab at your role. This reflects a key historical tension. While the groom at the stool was a male role, the traditional confidants for a monarch were often female, their wives or mothers, and was attempting to fill that role for Henry. But she had a permanent, institutional rival in you. You were a fixed part of the king's life in a way that even a queen was not. This led to a natural rivalry over access and influence. The court is now a minefield of shifting loyalties. Those who were loyal to Catherine are cast into the outer darkness, New faces, banning supporters, fill the ranks. You have to relearn the social map. Recalibrate your network of alliances. Your new lieutenant, Edmund, proves his worth, acting as your eyes and ears, reporting on the whispers and the shifting allegiances within the Queen's circle. The pressure on him is immense. The entire revolution was predicated on one thing: her ability to produce a male heir. When she gives birth, the child is a healthy, red-haired girl Elizabeth. The king hides his disappointment, but the entire court can feel it. The new queen has failed in her primary duty, just as the old one did. The foundation of her power develops a hairline crack. You see the king's frustration firsthand. In the privacy of the privy, his celebrations ring hollow. "A girl," he mutters one day. "A healthy girl. Praise God, but not a prince." He is worried about the succession, about the stability of his dynasty. He has torn his kingdom from its ancient religious foundations. All for this, and the result is the same. A weird, but poignant, historical detail is the sheer amount of money Henry spent on gifts and celebrations for both his illegitimate son, Henry Fitzroy, and his daughters, Mary and Elizabeth. The Privy Purse accounts, which you control, show payments for extravagant clothes, toys, and tutors. He was, in his own way, an affectionate father, but this affection was always secondary to his dynastic obsession. You are in a precarious position. You are a Boleyn man, but your ultimate loyalty is to the king. You watch as Anne's initial joy and triumph curdle into anxiety. Her temper becomes shorter, her arguments with the king more frequent and more reckless. She alienates potential allies with her arrogance, including your powerful colleague, Thomas Cromwell. You are the steady, stable rock in the king's tumultuous emotional life, while his new marriage is a rollercoaster of passion and conflict. His relationship with you is constant and predictable. You are his quiet haven. He comes to rely on your calm, unflappable presence more than ever. The phrase "the iron-willed Jew," the flowing water of queens begins to form in your mind. Queens may come and go, their fortunes rising and falling with their fertility and the king's mercurial affections. But you endure. Your role is not dependent on romance or childbirth. It is built on the solid, unglamorous foundations of practicality, discretion, and service. You were there before Anne, and you are beginning to suspect you will be there after her. You stand at the heart of the court, watching the great drama unfold. You have survived the fall of one queen, and you are now navigating the turbulent reign of the next. You have learned the ultimate lesson of survival at the Tudor court. Tie yourself not to a faction or a family, but to the king alone. You are his servant, and in that service, you have found the only true security that exists in this glittering, treacherous world. The years have a way of grinding down even the most formidable men. The king, once a golden prince, a vibrant athlete and a towering figure of vitality, is beginning to show the wear and tear of a life lived at full throttle. The river of time is eroding the mountain, and you, his constant companion, have a closer view of this decay than anyone. You are the sole witness to the slow, painful twilight of the lion. The physical decline is the most obvious. The jousting accident from years ago was more than just a wound on his leg. It was the beginning of the end of his athletic prowess. The ulcer never truly heals. It is a constant source of pain, turning him from an active sportsman into a sedentary, irritable monarch. His magnificent physique, once honed by wrestling, tennis, and riding, begins to soften and swell. The rich food and wine, which he once burned off with exercise, now cling to him, adding layer upon layer to his once mighty frame. Your duties change. Dressing him is no longer about adorning a demigod, it's about accommodating a body that is becoming a prison. You have to commission new, larger clothes. Getting his boots on can be an agonizing process for him. The simple act of rising from a chair requires effort. The privy, your private domain, becomes more of a medical theater than ever before. His bodily functions, once a sign of robust health, are now a source of constant concern. You are in a state of high alert for any sign of deterioration. Your discreet reports to him are no longer about avoiding indigestion, they are about managing a chronic, systemic decline. His mood darkens in tandem with his health. The jovial, confident king is seen less and less. In his place is a man plagued by pain, suspicion, and a deep-seated fear of his own mortality. His rages are less like sudden summer thunderstorms and more like a permanent, oppressive, overcast sky. The techniques you develop to soothe him, distraction, flattery, comfort, are still effective, but you have to use them more and more often. This period of Henry's life is a subject of much historical debate. How much of his later tyranny, the executions, the paranoia, the brutal suppression of dissent, can be attributed to his chronic pain? Some historians argue that the constant, agonizing pain from his leg also fundamentally changed his personality, turning him into the monster of popular imagination. Others maintain that he was always ruthless, and his later years simply saw him with more power and fewer restraints. From your vantage point, you see the clear link between his physical suffering and his mental cruelty. When his leg throbs, the heads of his enemies tremble. The fall of Anne Boleyn was a brutal turning point. You witnessed it all, the king's infatuation curdling into deadly resentment, the trumped-up charges of adultery, the terrifyingly swift trials and executions. You saw your former allies in the Boleyn faction, including the witty George Boleyn and the hopeful musician Mark Smeaton, dragged to their deaths. You survived the purge by being impeccably neutral, your loyalty attached only to the king. You were the stable fixture while the world burned around you. Now he is married to his third queen, the gentle and placid Jane Seymour. She is the opposite of an in every way quiet, submissive, and respectful. She treats you with a polite deference, seeming to understand and accept your unique place in her husband's life. When she finally gives the king what he has always craved, a son, Prince Edward, the entire kingdom celebrates. But the triumph is short-lived. Queen Jane dies from complications of childbirth just days later. The king is shattered. His joy turns to a profound, deep grief that is unlike any emotion you have ever seen him display. He retreats into himself, into his pain, and into a deep paranoia. This is a strange and sad historical fact. The one wife who gave him what he wanted, he lost. He commanded that he be buried next to her, a sign of genuine and lasting affection that he showed for no other wife. During this period of mourning, you become his only constant companion. The counselors and courtiers are kept at a distance. It is just you and him, in the quiet, shadowed rooms of the palace. He doesn't talk much. He just sits, staring into the fire. A great, wounded beast. Your job is not to cheer him up. It is simply to be there, a silent, comforting presence. You ensure his glass is full, his fire is lit, and his pain is managed. You are no longer just a servant or a confidant. You are a caregiver. You are tending to a man who is simultaneously the most powerful person in the realm and a deeply broken, aging patient. You see the moments of vulnerability that no one else does, the way he winces when he thinks no one is looking, the quiet sigh of despair when he struggles to his feet, the flicker of fear in his eyes when he contemplates his own end. The lion's roar is still fearsome, and he can still strike with deadly force. But you know the truth. The magnificent beast is dying. The claws are still sharp, but the heart is failing, and you are the one who will be there, in the shadows, until the very last beat. The king's decline is a stark reminder of your own mortality. You are not as young as you once were. The years of long hours, constant stress, and the psychological burden of carrying a nation's secrets have left their mark on you. You see the grey in your own hair in the mirror. You feel the ache in your own joints on cold mornings. The king's twilight is a warning. Your time in the sun of royal favour is not infinite. You need to secure your legacy. Power at court is ephemeral. It can vanish overnight with a shift in the king's mood or the rise of a new favourite. The only power that truly lasts is the power of land and title. The kind of security you can pass down to your children. Your own son, a young man now, is growing up in a world you could only have dreamed of. He is educated, he He is wealthy. He is comfortable. But his position is entirely dependent on yours. If you fall, he falls with you. You need to build a foundation for your family that can withstand the storm when you are no longer there to shield them. This becomes your new, quiet obsession. You have spent your life serving the king's dynasty now. You must serve your own. You begin to use your influence not for grand political schemes, but for the slow, careful accumulation of permanent, heritable wealth. You use the privy purse, your ultimate tool, with more strategic precision than ever. When a piece of land adjoining your own estate becomes available, you ensure you are the first to know. You petition the king for the right to purchase it at a favorable price, framing it as a way to better manage the royal forests nearby. The king, who is now often lost in a fog of pain and memory, readily agrees. Your estate grows, acre by acre. You arrange a strategic marriage for your eldest son. The bride is the daughter of a respectable, old gentry family, not the high nobility, which would be too ambitious and might attract negative attention, but a family with deep roots and extensive connections in their county. You use your wealth to offer a generous marriage settlement that they cannot refuse. The union solidifies your family's place in local society. It gives your new money the faint, respectable scent of old acres. This practice of using court connections to secure advantageous marriages was a cornerstone of social climbing in the era. It's a key historical point that families were political and economic units, and a good marriage was the most important alliance one could make. You also begin to quietly pull strings for other family members. A promising nephew is found a place at the Inns of Court in London to study law, his fees discreetly paid from your own accounts. A cousin with military ambitions is recommended for a junior command in the garrison at Calais. You are building a network, a dynasty in miniature, placing your people in positions of modest but stable influence. You are not trying to create a new faction to rival the great nobles. You are weaving your family into the very fabric of the establishment. A weirdly specific, but illustrative, side of this is the trade in minor officers. The court had hundreds of small, salaried positions, things like the keeper of the royal park at Windsor, or the surveyor of the king's mines in Cornwall. These jobs often came with a house and a small income. They were perfect, safe sign of caress for loyal followers or family members. You use your knowledge and access to secure several of these for your more distant relatives. Historians often trace the rise of a family not through one great appointment, but through the slow accumulation of these many small, seemingly insignificant posts. Your relationship with your own ambitious subordinate, Edmund, proves useful here. You give him tasks that serve your own dynastic goals. You send him to inspect a property you are considering buying, or to negotiate the terms of a land lease with a stubborn tenant. He performs these tasks diligently, knowing that his own advancement is tied to his usefulness to you. He is helping you build your legacy, perhaps hoping that one day he will be able to do the same for himself. There is a quiet urgency to your work. The king's health is visibly failing. He has gone through to more wives after Jane Seymour the brief political match with Anne of Cleves, and the disastrous, youthful Catherine Howard, whose execution cast another dark shadow over the court. Now, he is married to his sixth and final wife, the mature, sensible Catherine Parr, who acts more as his nurse than his spouse. The end is near. Everyone can feel it. The court is a hotbed of anxiety and jockeying for position. Factions are coalescing around the 9-year-old heir, Prince Edward. Everyone is trying to guess who will control the Council of Regency that will rule after the king is gone. Would it be the evangelicals, like Cromwell's successors, or the conservatives, like the Duke of Norfolk? You, however, stay out of the grand succession politics. Your ambition is smaller, more personal, and more likely to succeed. You are not trying to rule the country. You are just trying to ensure that when the great oak tree of King Henry finally falls, your own small sapling is strong enough to survive in the new, uncertain light. You are using the last rays of the setting sun to nurture the seeds of your own family's future. The end comes not with a bang, but with a slow, agonizing whimper. The king, the great lion of England, is confined to his chambers, a prisoner in a body that has betrayed him. The stench of his ulcerated leg, which the physicians can no longer manage, fills the lavishly decorated rooms. A constant, grim reminder of mortality that overwhelms the scent of beeswax and burning herbs. The palace of Hampton Court, once a vibrant center of power and pleasure, becomes a hushed, anxious death chamber. Your duties in these final weeks are constant. You barely leave his side. You are no longer just a groom of the Stool, you are the chief nurse, the comforter, the constant presence in the face of the final terror. You sleep on a small cot at the foot of his bed, your sleep punctuated by his groans of pain and his feverish, muttered ramblings. He is a difficult patient. His mind, clouded by pain-numbed opiates, drifts between moments of startling clarity and long periods of paranoid confusion. In his lucid moments, he is terrified. He, the man who defied the Pope and bent a nation to his will, is now powerless against his own decaying flesh. "I am dying," he says to you one night, his voice a raw whisper. It is not a question. It is a statement of disbelief, of outrage. In his confusion, he mistakes you for people from his past. One moment, you are his long-dead brother, Arthur. The next, you are his old friend Charles Brandon. He has conversations with ghosts, arguing again with Cardinal Wolsey, laughing at a long-forgotten joke with a court jester from his youth. You are the sole audience for this final, tragic play, the pageant of a king's memory dissolving. The historical accounts of Henry's last days are sparse and often contradictory. The official line was that he passed away peacefully, his mind clear and his soul prepared. But the few, more private accounts, like the one you are living, suggest a far more tormented end. The debate over his final words, whether he truly cried out for monks, 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 or if he passed in pious silence, continues to this day, a testament to the mystery that surrounds even a king's death. Your final service to him is the most intimate and perhaps the most difficult. His body is failing in every way. The simple dignity that you have helped him maintain for decades is now almost impossible. The close stool sits unused in the corner. You now attend to him in his bed, a humiliating and painful process for a man who was once the epitome of pride. You do it with the same detached professionalism and quiet compassion you have always shown. You are preserving the last shreds of his majesty, even as his body surrenders to indignity. One afternoon, he is lucid, his eyes are clear, and he looks at you, truly seeing you for the first time in days. "You have been a good servant," he says, his voice surprisingly strong, loyal. It is the simplest, most profound epitaph you could ever receive from him. All the years of service, all the secrets, all the dirty work, all reduced to that single, vital word, loyal. He gestures weakly towards a small, locked casket on a nearby table. "My will," he says. "Make sure they do not change it. Cromwell's men, they are vultures. See to it." He is entrusting you with his final act of will, his last command. He knows that as soon as he is gone, the political factions will tear each other apart to control the new boy king. His will is his attempt to control England from beyond the grave, to set up a council of regents that balances the factions. He trusts you, the servant, to be the honest guardian of his legacy in a way he no longer trusts the great lords of his council. This is a testament to the unique bond you have forged. A weird detail of Tudor politics is that trust was often placed in servants over nobles, because servants had no independent power base. Their loyalty was not a choice, it was a necessity. You were trusted because you were, in the grand scheme of things, powerless without the king. You reassured him that you will guard the will. The promise seems to give him some measure of peace. Later that night, as the physicians fuss around him and the Archbishop of Canterbury is summoned to hear a final, mumbled confession, the king's breathing becomes shallow. The great, turbulent life is guttering out like a candle in the wind. You stand in the shadows at the back of the room, watching the great lords and bishops gather around the bed. Their faces a mixture of grief, fear, and raw ambition. They are already thinking of the future, of the power vacuum he will leave behind. But you are thinking of the past. You are remembering the young, vibrant king you first met. You remember the shared secrets, the quiet moments of trust, the terrifying orders. You have spent your entire adult life in service to this one. Colossal, complicated man. His life has been your life. When the final breath is drawn and a hush falls over the room, you feel a strange and overwhelming emptiness. The psalm has said, for the first time in decades, you are without a master. You performed your duty to the very end. This was your last service to the king, and as the new era dawns, cold and uncertain, you are left alone with the memory of the man who made you, and the knowledge that a great and terrible chapter of your life, and of England's history, has just come to a close. The king is dead. Long live the king. The phrase echoes through the halls of the palace, a formal declaration that in the monarchy, there is no interregnum. Power abhors a vacuum. The moment Henry's life ended, the reign of his 9-year-old son, Edward VI, began. For you, the transition is both seamless and jarring. The world has changed overnight, but your job, in title at least, remains the same. The new king is a boy. He is a serious, intelligent, and intensely pious child, raised by Protestant tutors and surrounded by the reformist faction that now dominates the court. The new center of power is not the king himself, but his uncle, Edward Seymour, who quickly outmaneuvers his rivals on the Regency Council to become Lord Protector of the realm. The court of the bluff, boisterous Henry has been replaced by the sober, austere court of a boy king and his calculating uncle. Your position is secure. For now, the new Lord Protector is a pragmatist. He knows you were Henry's most trusted servant, a keeper of his secrets and his finances. You are too valuable, and you know too much, to be simply cast aside. You are kept on as groom of the Stool to the new king. It is a sign of continuity, a signal that the new regime respects the old king's appointments. But the job is completely different. Your relationship with Henry was a complex tapestry woven over decades. With Edward, you are essentially a glorified nanny. You are dealing with a child. Your duties are simpler, more straightforward. You help him dress. You oversee his immediate household needs. You ensure his routine is kept. The privy is no longer a chamber of state secrets and dark confessions. It is just a privy. The conversations are not about deposing popes or starting wars. They are about the young king's lessons. His pony, his dislike of a certain kind of vegetable. You are no longer at the heart of power. You are on the periphery of the royal nursery. The power you once wielded, the subtle influence, the gatekeeping, the back-channel lobbying has evaporated. The courtiers who once paid you for a well-timed word with Henry now bypass you completely. They go directly to the Lord Protector or the other members of the council. Your whispers no longer hold any weight because the ear you are whispering into belongs to a child who is not yet truly in command. This is a classic historical scenario, the challenge faced by the servants of a long-reigning monarch when a new, young ruler takes over. Your power was personal, based on your unique relationship with Henry. It was not institutional. You are a relic of a bygone era, a man whose skills are no longer relevant to the new political game. You watch the new power dynamics with the detached eye of a seasoned observer. The Lord Protector, now Duke of Somerset, rules with an almost royal authority. Your old colleague, Thomas Cromwell, would have been impressed by his efficiency and ruthlessness. The court is colder, more openly political, less driven by the personal whims of the monarch and more by the cold calculations of factional advantage. One of your new, and strangest, duties is to manage the dry stamp. Since the young king cannot be expected to sign the mountain of official documents required every day, a stamp of his signature was created. You, as one of his most trusted personal attendants, are one of the few people authorized to use it. This gives you a flicker of your old power. A document, one stamp. is legally the king's will. This is a weird but true piece of history. The dry stamp was a key to love governance during Edward's minority. But it was also a source of intense political controversy. Whoever controlled the stamp could, in theory, rule the country. You hold this power, but you ruled it only on the direct orders of the council. You are a functionary, not an operator. You find yourself in a comfortable but frustrating position. Your lands and wealth are secure, thanks to your foresight in Henry's final years. You are respected as a senior figure at court, a man who knew the great King Henry better than anyone. But you are no longer a player. You are a monument. Your old rival, Henry Norris, who coveted your job, is long dead, executed alongside Anne Boleyn. Your ambitious subordinate, Edmund, has leveraged the connection to you into a solid, if unspectacular, career on the fringes of the new administration. He is now one of the clerks of the council, a man of paper and ink. He still treats you with immense respect. But you both know the dynamic has changed. He is on the inside of the new machine, and you are on the outside looking in. The rules have all changed. Loyalty is still paramount, but it's loyalty to a committee, to a faction, to an ideology, Protestantism rather than to a single, unpredictable man. The game is less personal, more bureaucratic. It is a world you understand, but it is not a world you are built for. Your expertise was in managing the complex, flawed, brilliant personality of Henry Tudor. That skill is now obsolete. You perform your duties with the same quiet diligence as always. You are a good and faithful servant to the young king, but the thrill, the danger, the intoxicating proximity to the white-hot center of power is gone. You are, for the first time in your adult life, safe, and you find, to your own surprise, that it is incredibly, profoundly boring. The years of the boy king's reign pass in a haze of sober routine. You watch Edward grow from a serious child into a lanky, even more serious teenager, his Protestant piety deepening with every passing year. You continue in your role, a familiar, comforting presence from his father's time, a living link to a past he barely remembers. But your heart is no longer at court. Your mind is increasingly on your lands in Kent, on the solid, tangible reality of your estate, a world away from the shifting politics of London. You finally decide it is time. You are old. You have served to kings. You have amassed a fortune and secured your family's future. There is nothing left for you to achieve at court. The game is for younger men now. Men like Edmund, who are adept at navigating the treacherous waters of council politics. You petition the Lord Protector for permission to retire. It is granted with surprising ease. You are a relic, and the new regime is happy to pension you off and install a younger man, someone more aligned with their own faction, in your place. They give you a generous annual pension and the honorary title of Keeper of the King's Privy Wardrobe, a role with no real duties that allows you to retain a sliver of courtly dignity. Your last day at the palace is surreal. You walk through the grand halls and courtyards for the final time, no longer as a servant, but as a visitor. The faces are younger, more severe than the ones you remember from Henry's boisterous Scot. The air of paranoid plotting is still there, but the scent of lusty, chaotic life has been replaced by a thin, cold odor of religious zeal. It is not your world anymore. You ride away from London without a backward glance. The journey home to Kent is the reverse of the one you made as a terrified young man decades ago. You are no longer entering a terrifying, unknown future. You are returning to a peaceful, well-ordered past that you yourself have built. Your manor at Blackwood is now a magnificent country house. The small, falsified building you were granted has been expanded and beautified with the profits of your long career. It has large glass windows, a sign of immense wealth, and chimneys that don't smoke. The gardens are immaculate. The fields are productive, and the tenants are prosperous. This is your kingdom. You settle into a new rhythm, one dictated by the seasons, not by a king's digestion. You spend your days overseeing your estate, walking your lands, and sitting by the massive fireplace in your great hall. Your son and his wife live with you, and the laughter of your grandchildren, who know you only as a kindly old man, fills the house. In the evenings, you sometimes sit alone in your study, a glass of fine French wine in your hand. On the wall hangs a single portrait, a small one of a young, handsome, red-bearded King Henry VIII, painted before the pain and paranoia took hold. You look at his face and the memories come flooding back. You remember the terror of your first day, the shocking intimacy of the role. You remember the weight of the first state secret, the thrill of the first bribe. You remember the Queen's sorrowful eyes, the King's roar of rage, the quiet rustle of a payment for a dark deed. You remember the feel of the hawk on your glove, the cold weight of the dry stamp in your hand. Your life was a bizarre, dangerous, and improbable story. Historians, your mirrors, will never get it right. They will read the official records, the state papers, the ambassadors' reports. They will see the grand sweep of history, the break with Rome, the dissolution of the monasteries, the endless wars, but they will never know the truth you know. They will never understand that so much of that history was shaped by the very human things that happened in a small, private room. That a decision about a new tax might have been influenced by a bout of indigestion. That an alliance with France could have been soured by a sleepless night. That the fate of a great nobleman might have been sealed by a whispered word while the king was at his most vulnerable. You know that history is not just a grand narrative, it's an intimate, messy, and often deeply personal affair. The academic debate over the true nature of your role will likely never cease. Were you a powerful minister without a portfolio, or a glorified janitor with good connections, a back-channel diplomat, or an overpaid valet? The answer, you know, is that you were all of those things. And more, you were a category of one. As the fire crackles and the shadows dance on the walls, you smile a little. You, the groom of the Stool. It was a ridiculous title for a ridiculous job. But it gave you a life beyond your wildest dreams. You survived. You prospered. In the brutal, high-stakes game of the Tudor court. That is the only victory that truly matters. The fire in the hearth settles into a soft, orange glow, its warmth seeping into the old stones of the manor house. Outside, a gentle rain begins to fall, a sound you haven't truly listened to in years, a soft patter against the leaded glass of the windows. It's a peaceful sound, a sound of closure. The frantic, noisy, dangerous world of the court feels a million miles away, a half-remembered dream. The faces of the people you knew, the kings, the queens, the plotters fade like old watercolors, their sharp edges softened by time and distance. You feel a profound sense of peace settle over you, as quiet and as deep as the Kentish countryside. The secrets you carried for so long no longer feel like a burden. They are just stories now, tales to be filed away in the vast, silent library of the past. The weight has been lifted. Your breathing slows, matching the gentle rhythm of the rain. The warmth of the fire, the comfort of your chair, the quiet of your own home. It all conspires to pull you down into a gentle, well-earned rest. The long, strange journey is over. You are home. You are safe. The story is finished. And now, it's time to sleep. Just close your eyes and let the soft sound of the rain carry you away into a quiet, peaceful dream. Let the world you built with your own hands hold you, and let the long, deep rest begin. The end of the article. Good night.